All right. All right, looks like we've got some people trickling in now. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Amy, how's it going? This is Matt with Carroll College.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Good. Kind of your host today, so you just let me know if you need anything.
Sweet, thanks. What do you do at Carroll College?
I'm an academic technologist.
Oh, sweet. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. I was going to say, I was like, I don't think I've met Matt before on all the times I've been out there.
I'm kind of the new Ryan, if you know Ryan.
Yeah, I know Ryan. Yeah. This is my 7th mountain moot, so pretty familiar with the, yeah. So pretty excited to be here. So how are you liking it so far?
Oh, I love it.
Cool. Are you originally like from the Helena area?
Yeah, I grew up here, and I was away for a while, living in a few other cities in Western Montana, and then ended up back here eventually.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We have like Helena is my home away from home. It's probably my favorite place to go. So I frequently visit, except for the last 2 years. So behind me, I have a little sign that I actually picked up at the farmer's market there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually.
Yeah. So I started coming to the Mountain Moot in 2015. And like as a kid growing up, I have coffee spilled everywhere again. As a kid growing up, I'd always wanted to visit Montana, and I live in upstate New York, so I'd never been. And so I went to this Mountain Moot the first time in 2015, and I was like, this place is amazing. I wish I could move here like now. So I've gone every year since. I've gone, there's some years I go twice, brought the kids out, stuff like that. But yeah, so we always make like a big thing out of coming to the Mountain Moot usually. So there's kind of a core group of us who have become friends through this conference, and I usually fly to Calgary. We do a big road trip down, and then we always go to the farmer's market when we're there. It's like our little thing that we do. We have like our whole little agenda we do every time we're there. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, hopefully this is the last time we got to do the virtual thing, and
I know
heard so much about the in-person one. I gotta experience it.
I know you do. It's gonna be crazy. It'll be all insane next year when everyone's like finally allowed to roam about and have a life again.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
All right. So it looks like we got about 13 people in so far. We have about 30 registered in the course. We'll hang out for a couple minutes while people hop back in, especially after lunch and stuff.
Sounds good.
And just, Matt, we're scheduled for 3 hours. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, cool. Hey, Kent. It's good to see you.
Hey, Amy. How in the world are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good.
Good.
Doing great.
Good. Still out there? Still. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thought I'd kind of get back up to speed. I've not done any moodling in quite a spell. So.
All right. Well, we'll get you all ready to be moodling today. I can get you through our Moodle for new users. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
You have any new books out?
I do.
Nice.
I do. We probably the most recent things, Letters from the Oklahoma Land Run, did that one, which is fabulous. Letters from Indian Territory. We kind of published all our research related to that old Boston book, and then there's just all these linkages you just can't imagine, So it's been fun. It's been a good time.
Awesome.
Have a couple more things in the pipeline as well. So
good. You'll have to let me know. So my oldest is now almost 13, and he is getting really into books that talk about like anything kind of historical, but like he likes the real. We had a book that was all about letters during the Revolutionary War that he was reading for a while, and He's been really into like reading all of these different things. So I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, I think he's probably old enough now to be able to read some of those books. Because I know when you were first writing them, he was like young, and it was one above his reading level, two probably not. Some of the stuff was not super appropriate at the time, just because he was so little.
Yeah, we've actually talked about converting some of them. I mean, like I say, it just is what it is. I mean, it's all
Right.
historically accurate. It's what people saw when they came west, and and we actually have had a request to like, I guess, make it a little bit, a little bit tamer on some of them, because I mean, it literally is. It ranges from people commenting on God's glory when they first saw the Rockies to somebody got lynched last Thursday.
Right. And I would like rather he read a book like that than he's just trying to like go out and research stuff on the internet now, which is like, the big battle once your kids at a certain age and school gave him a Chromebook and suddenly he was able to find everything. And I was like, I think it would be better if you had some context about some of these things that you're looking up. So
yeah. We actually have finished Letters from Montana, but I'm finishing up some permissions, a couple permissions, and some copyright stuff on that one. So if I kick it in gear, I'll be done by the end of this summer. I just got to get it done.
Very cool. Awesome.
I guess since this is the Helena Mountain Moot, it's appropriate to finish a book about Montana.
It
right?
is. Absolutely. Hey. All right, Matt. So it looks like we've kind of leveled off the people joining. We're about 3 minutes after the hour. I'll get started. I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself. We'll jump into what the agenda sort of looks like for today. I'll be honest, it's a workshop and I have an agenda, but the agenda tends to be a little bit fluid. So if like a question pops up as we're going along and you're like, oh wait, I have a question about this, pop it in the chat. I'm going to stop every like 10 or 15 minutes and just go through the chat, grab the questions, open up a question and answer time. We are going to take 2 10-minute breaks because we do have 3 hours and we need to get up, move around, have a drink, whatever. I do have a breakout activity where I'll be able to put people into breakout rooms if we can do that on here and assign you kind of a scenario where you're going to build something and then come back and present. We'll do that if we have time. Or if there's like an overwhelming request for that. I know not everybody loves breakout rooms, but we'll get to that in a minute. So let me jump into my introduction and then we'll run through the agenda. Then we're going to take a look at the course where today I uploaded a lot of resources for you. The resources that you'll see in that course are actually resources from a recently offered course through our eThink by OpenLMS Academy, where we recently just wrapped up a Moodle for new users course. So let's jump in. So my name is AmyTessitore. I am located in upstate New York. I am between Albany and Saratoga, where it has been storming off and on for the last hour, of course. But that's where I'm from. This is my 7th Mountain Moot. I was telling Matt that when we started. This is my 7th Mountain Moot. I'm glad that we can get together. I will be even happier next year when we can be together in person because Helena is my home away from home. I have been working with Moodle since about 2013 when I started working as an accessibility consultant. And I was going through courses that were built on a Moodle 2.2, 2.4 platform at the time and checking them for accessibility issues and then reporting those on up to the ID team who was tasked with fixing them. After that, I really started to enjoy the instructional design side of things. So I decided I would go back to school, started a master's in instructional design, while I also took a job as an instructional designer at a college. And I do the air quotes here because while that was my title, I did very little actual instructional design. I did all of the Moodle admin. I did create resources and things within Moodle, but it really was not instructional design in the sense that I wasn't, creating things like SCORM packages and things like that. Everything that we were doing was based off of the Moodle system, which is really when I became to love the platform and start to kind of become a Moodle evangelist and share what I knew and my excitement with everyone. I was there for about 6 years before coming over to eThink just over a year ago, where I started on the support side of things. And so I was a tier 1 support person, answering questions and support tickets that were coming in, solving problems. And I kind of naturally gravitated over to the training side of things, which is something I really like. And through that became the owner of the eThink Academy. And so I became in charge of this academy. And over the past year, I have been working on expanding our academy offerings. And so we operate a full academy where we offer facilitated courses for folks. We try to keep that price pretty low because we know that it's hard to get budget to come to these things and to attend courses. We offer a range of courses. I work with my counterpart, Michael, and we kind of dream up what are the courses we always wished we had access to? What do we think people would like? We kind of create our vision, we build the courses, and we also facilitate them. So just earlier today, we actually kicked off our Introduction to Moodle Site Admin course, and we just wrapped up our Moodle for New Users course. So this topic is perfect. It kind of fits really well. Let me share out my screen. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you're all seeing my slide deck now. We recently transitioned away from Microsoft and Zoom to like all Google stuff. So now I'm having to struggle to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, sharing the right screens now. So here we are, we're in Moodle for New Users. And what we're gonna look at today, our workshop format is, this is 3 hours in length. This will be primarily live demonstration. So I'm gonna go through all of the different things that we're gonna talk about here today, and we're gonna live demo and build them out on the site while we talk about them. I already have some pre-built examples there. And what I did was I brought in all of the tutorials I've created that are related to what we'll talk about today. And those are also in the course for you. So you can go through and see pre-recorded video and lessons that we've created over time. And I've put those right there in our course on the MtMoot2021 site. You may want to follow along in your sandbox site if you want to build things kind of as we go and play around in there. Everyone has a sandbox site here at the conference, and so I encourage you to use it. As I mentioned, we'll do 2 10-minute breaks. We have one breakout session scheduled. That is not a make or break, so if we don't have time, we will skip that. And then if we do the breakout, there'll be a little time for presentation. And I like to keep some time at the end for question and answer so that if anything comes up along the way, you can ask those questions. We're going to start with a course overview in the basics. So basically navigating the course, where do we find those course settings? How do we know if we're in editing mode? How do we move content around? And we'll get into a brief introduction about the gradebook. I have some more detailed tutorials in the actual course related to gradebook. Gradebook is something we could do a whole 3 to 4 hour session on. And so I'll do an introduction, and then any additional information you want after this workshop is done, be sure to go back into that Moodle course and go through those different tutorials that I have in there. Next, we'll go to activities and resources. So we'll look at assignment, book, forum, label, quiz. And if there's anything else you really want to know about, let me know. We can touch on it. We'll look at what the settings are for all of these. We'll look at things related to activity completion because they do vary a bit between the different activities and resources. And we'll talk about how to set them up. And then we'll talk about how we use them as a template. So how do we set something up once? And then if I've got 10 assignments in my course and I want them all to be the same, how do I make that happen but reduce my workload so I'm not reinventing the wheel every time? So that's going to follow under our tips and tricks. And I was super excited to see that Ryan had Sharing Cart on this site. I'll tell you all about Sharing Cart. It is one of my very favorite plugins. I've been using it for a number of years, and I think it's a really great way to move content around and share it between different courses without having to use the import feature, which sometimes it happens all the time where you accidentally import a whole course over the top of your existing course when you meant to bring 1 or 2 things over. Sharing Cart will take care of that for us. We'll talk about that. Our breakout looks like this. The breakout will come after activities, and we have 3 different scenarios. So if I'm able to shuffle you all out into breakout groups, I'll do so. And then you'll pick from a scenario here. We'll talk about that when we get there, if we get there. Next, we're going to talk about some basic design and accessibility principles. One of the things that I'm pretty passionate about is accessibility. And I know there are some that Gavin Henrik is going to offer an accessibility session here at the MtMoot, and I strongly encourage you to go to that if you have questions about accessibility or want to learn more. But we're going to talk about some basic design principles. So that consistency in a course. How do we make sure people aren't relearning and getting over the hurdle of technology from week to week and course to course? How do we make our courses content rich, but not overloaded and overwhelming? And then we'll get into accessibility basics. I have a really nice slide deck that we'll go through when we talk about accessibility. And we'll go through all of the bits of accessibility in the platform. But you will hear me weave accessibility in throughout this entire presentation. So you'll get to learn more about it as we go. We'll then get into how do we engage our learners? What are the audio and video capabilities in this platform? H5P, which is another thing I absolutely love and I use all the time. Lesson, forum, and glossary. And so how can we use some of these different things? Then we'll get into course communication. This is a super quick tour around forums and some of the things to think about using messages. And then we can talk about the quick mail block. So if you have that, we'll talk a little bit about it. Then at the end, we'll take some time for questions. So let me move this out of the way here. Let me stop share for just a hot second and figure out where I put my. Just going to bring up the site real quick. Just got to close a couple windows here. All right. Okay. So while I'm getting over to the site, are there any questions that anyone wants to ask as we jump into this? And if you're feeling like, I'm above this isn't what I thought it was going to be, feel free to hop out. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't want you to stay in a session that you feel like isn't going to be super beneficial for you. So if you feel like your time might be better spent somewhere else, please feel free to hop over to that session or hop in and out here as you want to. All right, doesn't look like there's any questions. So let's share back out and get started. All right, I probably need to zoom in a bit here. There we go. All right, so here we are. We're in our Moodle course, Newdle for new users. And you'll note at the top, that's where we joined, right? We have our announcements forum where I've been posting some announcements. If you are at the end of this session, it would be great if you could leave me some session evaluation. And if you are from OPI, the Office of Public Instruction in Montana, you have your renewal unit takeaway digest information here. So make sure that you fill that out if you are from OPI so that you get the credit that you need there. You do need to attend the session to fill that out. And OPI educators must fill that out in order to get the OPI renewal credits. So I asked Ryan, first thing I said to him was, what theme are we using on this site? Because this is one that I don't use very frequently. He told me this is the Move theme. So Move is what we call a freemium type of theme, meaning that there is kind of a free version of it. The paid version of Move is actually pretty inexpensive, and that's what they're using here. So this is the Move theme. So this looks a little bit different than what you have seen in the past. That's why. I am very familiar with using themes such as Boost and Fordson. Those are some of them that I use pretty frequently. And I'll just drop a little hint here that the creator of Fordson, Chris Kenneberg, has created a new theme called Rebel, which is a new, very clean, very minimalistic theme. So if you are looking for a new theme for your site, definitely check out the Moodle plugin database and give a look at some of those different themes. First thing to know about your courses is that you have to set them up, right? So you can create this course, but then what do you do from there? Maybe someone's handed you a course and it doesn't really have a lot. You don't really know what the settings are. You want to change some things. In this particular theme, we have two options over here in the upper right-hand corner. Oh, and I have an annotator. Let me bring that up. There we go. So over here in the upper right-hand corner, we have two things. We can turn our editing on here. Depending on your theme, you may find this turn editing on button in the very top bar right up here. It might look like a button and you can turn it on and off. And then you have this cog right here. So if we click this little wheel, we have several options here that take us kind of to the course management options here. But the first one we're going to look at is editing settings. So the settings that we put in here impact a lot of different things. Things that you need to know. The course full name can be whatever you want it to be, and it doesn't need to be unique. So if I ran this course in the morning and in the afternoon, and I wanted two different courses, two different shells and landing places for people, I could name them both Moodle for new users. The piece that does need to be unique is that course short name. That cannot match any other courses on the site. So your course short name does need to be unique. In this case, if I were offering this course in the morning and the afternoon, I might add an AM and a PM. There, my course short name is similar, but things are different enough that Moodle will recognize it. Here you can see the course category. This site was set up with categories that are related to the time slots in which we're presenting. You may have categories related to a variety of things on your site. And that is perfectly okay. So you want to make sure that you have your course in the correct category if that's something you should do. More often than not, when a course is handed off to you, that category is already set there. So the course is in a category where it belongs, and you shouldn't have to touch too much there. This course visibility is important. Visibility determines whether your enrolled learners can see the course. Even if we've already passed the course start date, if visibility is set to hide, our learners will not be able to see this course. So course start and end date don't automatically open and close the course. They determine where on the user's dashboard this course is visible. So if I am prior to my course start date and the course is visible, this course will show up on the dashboard under the Future tab. If I'm between course start and end date and the course is set to show, I'll find this under my In Progress tab on my dashboard. If we've reached the course end date and the course is still set to show, I'll find this course listed in my Past tab. So you need to be mindful of both settings in order to make sure that your learners are able to see your course. In this case, obviously the course is set to show. Thankfully, we're all able to find it. Our start date and end date are both today, right? So our start date is today at, what's 1500 for me, but it's 1 o'clock Mountain Time. And the course ends 3 hours later. So tomorrow, if you log on and you're like, I want to go back and look at these resources Amy put in there, you'll need to look under your Past tab to see this course. Course ID number shouldn't be something, if as a teacher we're touching here. This may get passed over if you're using an integration from a student information system, or it may be something that you use internally. Here you can put your course description. In this case, it's my abstract that I submitted for this particular session. The course summary is visible in other parts of the site, but it's not visible once you enter the course. So don't put information in here that you want your learners to see when they come into the course. They won't see it. Scrolling down a bit, I added a course image here. The course image in this case displays across the background, but it also fills the tile on the dashboard. So this one actually did not work out the way I thought it would be. I thought it was perfectly sized and it cuts off most of the words. So when you look on your course on your dashboard, the course tile is not displaying this image in the way that I thought it would. But if you're looking at any of your other courses, you'll notice there's an image. That image comes from what we put here in the course image area. There we go. Course format. There are a variety of formats that you can use for a course. You have the topics format, and there's also weekly, social, and single activity format on this site. Your site may have others such as tiles, grid, buttons, and any number of other types of course formats. If you're ever wondering what something's going to look like as a course format, try it out in a test course or a sandbox course to get an idea. I think I did put in the book that I've put in here information and showing you what the different course formats look like in a course that I have already built. So you get an idea of, if it was topics, here's what it looks like as tiles, and here's what it looks like as buttons. The one thing I will tell you is that there are some accessibility concerns with tiles that you should be aware of. So if you're wanting to use tiles, you need to know that one of the problems that we're running into with tiles is that once you get into a tile, there is no way to exit the tile using keyboard only navigation. So when we talk in terms of accessibility, anything you're building needs to be completely keyboard navigable to be accessible. And that is the one piece in tiles that's a current sticking point, is that we can't escape or tab back out of that tile. Hidden sections. So we have some options here for what to do if we have sections hidden. Now, for many of us who are teaching, we are literally an hour sometimes ahead of our students, right? We are just adding content before things are supposed to open. So what are we going to do with sections we have hidden where we're still adding content? Do we want them to be shown with the section title, but the student can't access them? Or do we want them completely invisible? This is really a preference, and it really comes down to what you think works for your learner. Sometimes we have learners who are very frustrated by seeing those topic titles there and not being able to get into them. In that case, we may find that keeping them completely invisible and just having that topic appear once it's opened is actually better for our learners. They don't get as frustrated. We don't get as many questions about, why can't I get into this topic? I can see it there. So those are your options there for hidden sections. Course layout. I have changed this course. It's set in topics format to show one section per page. I prefer this because I find this to be easier to navigate on mobile devices, and it's also a little bit easier to navigate if you have learners who have neurologic considerations or mental health considerations such as ADD, ADHD, or anxiety. For those learners, when they come into a course where everything is out there on that course page, that can be very overwhelming and hard to navigate. So I prefer to show one section per page. And what this does is put the section title right out on the main page, and the content for that section is visible when I click that section title. Otherwise, all of the content would show on the course page all the time. If you have a course that doesn't have a ton of content, by all means, show it all on the course page. But if you want to make it a little bit easier to navigate, particularly a content heavy course, I encourage you to try show one section per page. Close that up. All right, under appearance here. So appearance, we can force language. And what that means is that we are forcing a specific language pack to take over in this course. Here, this is not set to force language. And what that means is if my user, my learner, changes their preferred language in their profile, if that's allowed on my site, things that are hard-coded language strings will show up in their preferred language. So what's a hard-coded language string? What is a language string? So when we look here in our navigation drawer and we see course sections or participants or things like that, these are in English because that's the default language pack on this site. If I wanted it to be in Pirate and I came down and I saved and displayed, what you will see is that some of these language strings are going to be translated. Usually down at the bottom here, we'll start to see some of them. Doesn't look like there's a lot of translations for the Pirate string. But let's say that you had learners whose primary language was French or Spanish or Hebrew. You can allow them to make those changes, or you can force that language for the course. So if I'm teaching a course in French, I may want to force the French language pack under appearance so that all of those hard-coded language strings, things in the navigation drawer, things in the grade book actually show up in French. And so that is what we do here with the appearance. You'll often find that on most sites, it's either set to do not force or it defaults to the primary language spoken in your institution. And you can see that we had this set to Pirate. So where we say show gradebook to students, it says aye or nay. Normally this says yes or no. Number of announcements. If I'm making announcements and using the latest announcements block, this number controls how many announcements I see in that block. Do we want to show our gradebook to students? So this is a question that may be solved on an institutional level where you are. So if you are showing gradebook to students, you'll want this to be set to yes. If you're doing a training program where the gradebook itself is not the, record of truth, it's whether or not people have earned a certificate or a badge or something like that, you may end up choosing no for this. So some of what we do with showing the gradebook is dependent upon our individual needs in our institution. Activity reports. This is activity reports for our learners. So here, each participant can look at their activity in the course. You may find it helpful for people to be able to see their own activity in the course by pulling that report. Now, unless you show your users, they likely aren't going to find that activity report, but it is there. Some of them are curious and they kind of navigate around and find that information. Files and uploads is always interesting. In this particular site, the site upload limit is 5 gigabytes. That's huge. Typically, you're going to see this at a much lower number, but this is the maximum upload size for a file. So if I'm requiring students to submit images or video to me, and I want them to directly upload those, I need to be mindful that if my file upload limit is set very low, they likely are not going to be able to upload this information. And if they come back to you and say, I tried to upload this and I can't, it says that the file is too large, this is where you can probably fix that. You'll need to set it here for the course and then also at the activity level. Completion tracking is important because this is how you see what people have completed. So I can enable completion tracking for the course. And what that will do is 1, allow me to see completion reports, and 2, allow me to set completion criteria for each activity. We'll look at how we set that up when we get down to activities. Next, we have groups. So we can create groups on the participants page. I'm happy to go over that if that's something that people are interested in. But we can force group mode for everything. I encourage you to leave it set to no groups and keep force group mode to off. We can always set groups as a criterion for access to something if we want to, but if we force it, that group setting is going to apply to everything in the course. Role renaming can be important. So here, if I'm not a teacher where I work and I'm a facilitator, if I type the word facilitator here in the participants list and on the course thumbnail, instead of it saying teacher with my name, it will say facilitator. Same thing if your people in your course enrolled in your course are not students, they're learners. You can change that here by changing student to learner. And then everywhere you look for their role, it will show up as learner. So whether that is in a restricted access situation or restricting by role, or in the participants list where I can see everyone's role. Finally, tags. Tags are something where we can create a standard tag set at the site level. And some of this is going to be determined by what rights you have and what your administrator does and whether or not tags are used on your site as a whole. If you create tags, then when you create activities or quiz questions or things like that, you can add a tag to them. It's been my experience that reporting on tags can be a little difficult. There are some ways to make some configurable reports to pull out which tags are being used, but that's what you can do there with tags. When we're done and we've set our course up just the way we want it, we click Save and Display, and this will take us right back out to our course. I'll pause there and see if anyone has any questions related to course settings. No? All right. Let me just want to keep my make sure we're staying on track here. All right. So now we're going to talk about editing, right? So before we can add anything to the course, we actually have to turn editing on in our course. And in this case, we have this prominent turn editing on button up here in the upper right. You may have editing in a different spot. So again, as I mentioned, it could be up here in the top bar, the header bar there, and it may look like a button. But when we click turn editing on, what you're going to notice is that we start to see these pencil icons, which allow us to change the title of things. And we can also see all of these edit options here. The other thing we see is this little basket that kind of is grayed out. That is our sharing cart basket. And so that's how we are going to use sharing cart. In order to use sharing cart, we had to add the sharing cart block to this course. You'll need to make sure that if you have sharing cart installed, if you don't see it in your course, you need to add the block in the course that you want to move things from, and it needs to be in the course that you want to move things to as well. So we've got our editing turned on, and let's pretend we don't have anything here. So we want to start adding things. We do that by coming down to this add an activity or resource. Now, if you're on an older site, you will see this in a list format. Beginning in version 3.9, the activity chooser got a facelift, and now it's set up kind of in a grid or table format. Things are arranged in alphabetical order. And what you'll see here is that you have the All tab, but you also have tabs now where you can look at just activities or just resources. The other cool thing that you can do is you can click this star, and when you do, you'll see you now have a starred tab. So I can go through and put a star next to those activities that I use pretty frequently so that they're just easier for me to find. Let's add some stars here. Okay. Let's see what we've got over here in starred. So now we have assignment, book, and forum here in starred. The way that your stars show up may be different based on the site that you're on. Usually on this page, that star will be filled in. In the move theme, they don't fill in. They just kind of move over here where you can see that the star is filled in. If you ever star something and decide, nope, I don't want it here, you can untick the star and it will move it out of there. You may also have a recommended tab on your site. Your site admin can set up some options to populate in a recommended tab as well. So if there's things that everybody uses pretty frequently, you might see those in the recommended tab. The other thing you'll notice is this I. This is for information. And when we click this, that slide out comes in and gives us all the information about this activity. So if you're not familiar with an activity yet, you can click that I, read a little bit about it, and then decide if you want to move forward with it. When we're ready to add something, we just actually click the title of it and we go ahead and we add it. We'll really focus on adding things just in the next bit once we get through this part. Now, let's say that I did create something, or there's some things populated already in my course and I want to move them around. I can do that by clicking this crosshair and moving things wherever I want them to go. So I can move whole sections. So if I need to reorder those, or just individual items in a course as well. Depending on your site, instead of a crosshair, you may see like stacked dots here, and you can use that to drag and drop things around as well. Speaking of drag and drop, one of the nice features about Moodle is that if I need to add files to Moodle, so let's say I have a Word template and I need my students to use it, or I have an Excel document and I want them to have it as a resource, I can actually just drag and drop it from my local device right onto the Moodle page, and it will automatically upload right there on the page. Now, if I want to use it in a resource such as a folder, I can add a folder, click into it, and then do the same. So that drag and drop functionality is super easy to use, and it's baked right in there. But while I'm on the topic of dragging and dropping things like Word documents, one of the things that we often see as a support gotcha is that people will highlight, copy, and paste something from Word. So they've highlighted it, they've copied it, and now they want to paste it in an assignment, on a page, somewhere here in the course. They're just going to copy and paste their Word stuff over. And then all of a sudden, the course doesn't look right. All of the editing buttons are askew. Maybe your footer is in the middle of your page. You can't figure out how to edit things. Everything's hidden. That is when we've brought in bad HTML, and we have to clear that HTML out. That issue is almost always due to bullets. So when we copy and paste bullets over from Word into Moodle, we will break things. And so if you ever find yourself in that situation, what you want to do is go back, work backwards, go to the last thing you added and make sure that there's no bullets in it. You'll need to clear everything out of there. What I often will tell people to do is copy your Word stuff and paste it into Notepad, which clears that formatting out. Then copy and paste it over here, or just get rid of the bullets. Once you're in Moodle, you'll have the option to add bullets. And we're going to jump over to what that is in just a second when we look at the Atto editor. But that's one of my, my hot tips for you there on how to avoid breaking your course. So now we know how to turn our editing on and things like that. We are going to jump into activities in just a minute, but I'm going to stop again for just to see if there's any questions really quickly and to take a quick drink. Any questions, let me know or put them in the chat. Looks like there's no questions. This is great. All right, let's talk about the Atto editor. So the Atto editor, or you may have the Tiny MC editor, there might be a question, is the editing formatting button that we see everywhere we go. So whenever we're creating something where we're entering text, we have that editor. That is going to come in super handy for us because it has lots of features in it. So let's just start down here under our Let's Create section. Feel free to bring up your sandbox course and follow along as we start to build things. We'll double up. We're going to talk about the Atto editor while we create some activities. We'll start small and go with a page activity. Now, I think I have a page down here. Let me look. These are books. I might not have brought a page over. We'll make a new one. This is a page. So a page is something that kind of opens as a pop-up. It's really like having a web page within your Moodle site. So here I have a web page all about using wikis and information here about using the wiki. I have some images on there. So what you're starting to see here is I'm able to bring in lots of different content types, lots of different media types here onto my page. You can even see the last time I modified this page. Be mindful of that because if you built a page way back, let's say you built something out there in 2018 and haven't updated it since, your learners are going to know that. So maybe you need to go in and just add a period, take it out, and save so that you know that you're looking at things. But it's also a good reminder for you as you go through and ready your courses. You can go through and say, you know what, this is from last year and I didn't review it yet. I can tell that because there's my last modified date. So how do we get all of this on this page? Well, let's make one. All right, coming on up here. We are going to come into Let's Create. Let's add an activity or resource. Now, activities and resources. I remember when I first started with Moodle, I thought, I don't really know how they're like kind of differentiating these. Like what makes something an activity versus a resource? And basically, here's the difference. An activity is something that your user, your learner can interact with somehow, but a resource is really where you're providing them information and not expecting a deliverable back. So in an assignment, we're asking someone to submit something. In attendance, they need to be there for me to mark them present. Big blue button, they need to attend my web conference. Chat, they're talking with me, right? So they're doing something. Resources are different. So book, I put information out. Same thing with file or folder. And as you can see, I'm just using things that give someone information as opposed to taking information from them. Let's click on page. One of the other things you'll notice is that the icon set here in this particular theme is quite a bit different than you'd see in Forward Center Boost. Took me a little bit to get used to that. When I look at the page, I'm looking to see something that looks like a page or piece of paper. This icon looks a little bit more like an old style web page for me, like the old IE type of things you saw on a Windows computer. So it took me a little bit, but I get it. So here I am, I'm on my page. I'm going to give it a title. First thing you're going to note is that's always a required field. You have to give everything a title. And then this is our toolbar, our editing toolbar. It doesn't look like we have much here, but we do. If we click this down arrow, we'll get a full, the full toolbar. I am going to close our nav drawer here to give us a little more space. And I did that just by clicking that hamburger icon at the top. But here I am. So what is this Atto toolbar, right? So if you're familiar with using a word processing program or something, I'm going to stop for just a second. Ken, how do we get to the sandbox in this Moodle course? It's not within this course. Your sandbox will be, if you go out onto your dashboard, you should see a course that's just yours. It might say Kenneth's sandbox or something like that. Let me duplicate because I imagine everyone has that question. Let's take a pause. Let's go out to the dashboard and I'll show you guys where to find that. I'm so glad you asked that. All right, let's open our nav drawer back up. Hang on. I'm going to click down here to go to my dashboard. All right, so here's my dashboard, my recently accessed courses. Down here is my course overview. And I have this set to all. This is actually a great point. So we talked a little bit about those course start and end dates. This is where they're affected, and these are the filters that affect that. But for me, my sandbox course is my first option right there. Yours should be there as well. And you'll also see any courses you've enrolled in. In my case, it's all the courses that I'm auto-enrolled in, as well as all of the different sessions that I'll be offering while we're here. So did that help? Are you able to find your sandbox course now? Awesome. All right, so everybody, that's how you get to your sandbox course. We're going to keep both of these tabs open. So here I am, back at this page. Okay, so we've added our page. Now, we've expanded to look at the whole toolbar. Here we have our formatting options, and this is where we can pick. Are we looking at paragraph? Pre-formatted is pretty cool. It looks like old style computer text. And then headings. Headings are an important piece in accessibility. When I have a large passage of text, I need to break that up with headings. Those headings help people using screen reader technology know that there are breaks in the text, that there's different ways that things are associated and chunked in your text. So we can use this here. Paragraph is just your typical typing. So that's what goes on there. This top box is a description. Now, you will get caught on this. Everyone does, where you type everything, you put everything up here in the description and then realize it's not showing, it's not letting you save. So you need to have something down here in your page content. That's what actually shows on the page. The description you can enter here. That goes with the page. It'll show at the top, but you can also display your description on the course page. This is a nice handy feature, but use it sparingly. As you can imagine, if I have 10 activities in my course and the description for every single one is on the main course page, it gets very lengthy and very cluttered. So here I am, page content. So I can type in here, and this is what the paragraph text looks like. I can make it bold or italicized, and I encourage you to use the functions here. And that is because let's bold this. And then I am going to show you what this looks like with HTML. So you see this green tag here. This is what's telling that text to be bold. In older versions, this might be a B for bold. The strong tag and the N strong tag, in the case of italics, that will say emphasize or emphasis, those are telling a screen reader that this is bold text, but also that it's for emphasis or it's strong. There's kind of a purpose behind it. This has been brought into play because often people use bold or italics as the sole means of conveying importance. But if I'm using a screen reader, or I am not able to, I don't have the ability to organize what that means, why things are bold, then bolding and italicizing something for the sole means of importance is lost on me. The same with using color and highlighting. If I'm colorblind and you tell me everything in red or blue is important and I can't see red or blue, I am already at a disadvantage. So keep that in mind as you're building your content. Make sure that if something is super important, in addition to using your color or your highlight or your bold, you also use the word important, either before or after in parentheses, to let your learner know that's important. And that way they'll know whether they're able to see your highlighting or their screen reader reads it or anything else. Italics is next to that. Here is where we're going to create those bullet lists. So we said don't use bullets from Word. So don't copy bullets. Very important here. So we're not going to copy bullets. I do have my spell check there so I can fix these things. When I am ready to highlight these or to bullet them, I can highlight them and put the bullets in. And much like working in Word, as I hit enter, my bullets continue. I have the option to do this too with an ordered list, which is what we call the numbered list. Next, I can create links. So, there are lots of times we want to link to something, and we could link to things both inside and outside of the course if we'd like to. So occasionally what I do is at the bottom of my course, I have a course resources section, and I always have my rubrics listed there. I have like my, this is where you get your help for ExamSoft, and here's the Moodle helpline, and here's how you download the app. So if I wanted to say to someone, make sure you read the rubric, I can actually just create a link for that rubric. So let's try it, right? So if I had a rubric in here, I could create a link and I could copy and paste something from within the course somewhere else, or I can add, an external URL for something. So I want them to go check, the policies and standards for wildlife management or something like that. I can actually just put that link in here. Now, here's what you need to, I'm just going to put a placeholder link in. That is one I know off the top of my head. Here's what to know about, highlight rubric, make the link, give the address. Okay, a couple of little accessibility pieces here. Your links should be descriptive links. So we've made the actual title of what we want someone to go to the link. You don't want to put the URL in as a link because someone using a screen reader, that screen reader is going to read that whole link out to them. But if it says rubric, it will tell the person using the screen reader that rubric is the link. The other thing we want to say is that it opens in a new window. So we put that in here so that if someone clicks the link and then the window doesn't open in the front of things, they know they should look around. Somewhere is a window. Maybe it's in the back, maybe it's on their other monitor, who knows, but this tells them that that link is somewhere else. Now, let's say I said, oh, that was the wrong link. I can break that link just by clicking the link break thing here. This next one is I can prevent auto linking. So Auto linking is a filter in courses. So if you ever log into your course and all of a sudden you start to notice as you're building things, all these links are being like automatically generated and you didn't do that, that's auto linking. We'll look at it in a minute and I'll explain it to you. But if I want to prevent auto linking, I can do that here. If I see something auto linking, I can like highlight it and prevent auto linking if I want. I can add an image. So if I go to add an image, I would click here and I can browse the repository. So if it's something saved locally, I am going to be required for accessibility purposes to put a description in. This is called your alt text, your alternate description, and you are limited to 125 characters. If you need more than 125 characters to describe what is happening in that image, you need a companion to the image, meaning you need a separate page that fully explains it. So when would you need this? So if I am posting an infographic, for example, there's no way I'll be able to explain everything happening in the infographic in 125 characters. So in order to make sure that people are able to have that alternate text instead of trying to fit it in there, I am going to instead create a companion so that people are able to understand the infographic. I can size it. Let me grab a picture from somewhere. See what I've got here. Let's see. And I want to grab this because I want to show you kind of a neat little thing here related to when you're uploading images. So let's grab this one. And it's going to be a client admin image, which is just an image that I created earlier. And, you know, I'm going to click to upload my file. Now, do you see how big this window got? That's because these sizes here are being actually rendered here on the screen so that you know how big the picture will be. So let's bring that down and see what happens. If I change that to 300, everything gets smaller. I'm seeing the actual size representation of the image. If you're using a newer version of Moodle, this may be something that's kind of new to you. I feel like we used to do a little trial and error of going back and forth to figure out the sizing on pictures, but now we can see that they're all adjustable here and we can see the actual sizes it will render. I will have to put a description in or check that it's decorative, because if I don't, I'm going to get the warning here that I have to have one or the other. In this case, I'll tick that it's decorative because it's just our example here. When I'm done, there it is. My image has gone in. So now you're starting to see how we can build out on the page with a variety of different content because that Addo editor has so much functionality. Other things that you can add a locally saved video file or a locally saved audio file. So if you've got like an MP4 kicking around there on your local device or something like that, you can add those in here if you want to. One of the things I will point out about that is if you directly load the video here into your course, and you do that a lot by adding a locally saved file, it's going to bulk up the size of your course because you're putting all of that video right there in the course. While this may not be a problem on the site that you're on, it can start to create very large courses that become difficult to back up and restore. So if I ran a course in the fall and that course is now 11 gigs because I have so much video in there, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just going to create a copy of that for spring, you're going to run into some problems, I think, because it's so large, things will start to time out. These next two features are sometimes overlooked. They're the record audio and record video features that are built directly into Moodle. So you don't need any software for these. When you're ready to use them, it's the RTC or RCT. I always mix the two up, but that's what it's called. It's built right in here. You can create very short audio and video snippets directly in your Moodle course. And you do that just by clicking the option. You can click to start the recording. It's going to ask if it can use your microphone. So we'll say sure. And you'll see that the clock starts to tick down. It's recording everything I'm saying now. And when I'm done, I can click to stop the recording. And I have the option to press play and listen to myself. If I'm unhappy with it, I can record again, or I can attach that recording. And when I do, it goes right on the page. Things to know here about both the audio and video piece. They don't function in Safari. So if you have users using Safari, these don't work well with Safari. They need to be using Chrome or Firefox. And that's more of a Safari problem. It's really not an issue related to the platform itself. It has to do with how the Safari browser works. But for many of you, if you are a Mac user or you are supporting Mac users, you already know that Safari is historically difficult to support for everything because lots of stuff breaks with it. If you wanted to do a video, it would be similar. You would click the video piece here. It's not going to let me do this because my webcam's already being used. But if I click start recording, it would ask to use my webcam, turn it on, and it would record my audio and video, and I could put in a small video. Now, remember this because you'll see that anywhere you have this toolbar, which means we'll see it when we are creating an assignment, when we're doing forum posts, and when we're leaving feedback to our learners in an assignment or something. This is super helpful when we talk about having young learners or learners who need something in multiple formats. So I know that on the response, we had someone respond and say that they're a kindergarten teacher. So I want to leave my kindergartner feedback. My kindergartners can't really read yet, right? They're not really there. So it's hard for me to leave them feedback on things, but I can do it if I give them a little video and they can, watch my video. One thing to know, there is not the option to add a transcript to either audio or video this way. So if you need transcripts, and you really do, make sure that you are adding those separately. How do I get around that? How do I use this and make it functional? When I'm leaving feedback for people, I often will record myself reading or giving the exact same feedback that is in my feedback blurb, my feedback comment that I've left for them. That way they can make a choice. Do they want to read it or do they want to actually see me giving the feedback? And the reason I like to do this is because as we all know, you can read something and you read it in one tone, but the person who wrote it may have written it in another tone. If I'm in a bad mood, I might read something that's totally benign and think, this person is being super short with me. I don't know why they're so critical. So sometimes having that extra audio or video there accompanying my text helps to make sure that my message is conveyed in the tone that I was trying to convey it in. So that's one of the ways that I like to use this feature. My next option here is to manage files. So I can manage whatever files are here. I have the ability to embed H5P. So if I've built H5P in my content bank, or I can actually insert it within other Moodle activities. So if I've built an H5P out and I want someone to read some page content, watch the video, and then do this H5P, I can embed it here. There are other ways to do that with H5P content types, such as course presentation, interactive book, or column, but you can embed H5P anywhere. This is pretty cool when we talk about quizzes because we can embed things in H5P things and quizzes also. Next, Ryan has on this site, y'all have the Generico piece for Addo. I won't get into that too much. There are some sites that use that, but not a whole ton. So if you are using Generico, you should see it here in your Addo toolbar. Then coming down, we have some more formatting. Underline, strike through, sub and superscript. Which way are we putting things? Is it left, justified, center? We can indent and outdent things. We have an equation editor. I'm going to talk to you more about the equation editor when we get over to accessibility, where I'll also talk to you about symbols and tables because those are a big part of it. Now, let's say I did copy and paste something or I formatted it. I made it like this big, huge heading. And for whatever reason, when I try to change it, it won't change. It won't go back to paragraph. I can highlight it and then click this button here, and I would be able to wipe out the formatting. More often than not, this issue occurs when we copy and paste things in. It brings over some wonky formatting, and then we can't get it to switch over to paragraph. If you just highlight it and click this little button here a couple times, it'll wipe that formatting out for you. These are probably my two favorite buttons because there did not used to be an undo button. And so you would do something like accidentally delete everything and then have to start from scratch. But now you have an undo button. So if I click that, you'll see that I now have undone that formatting change. And then I'm like, oops, wrong thing. I can redo it. These last two buttons are related to accessibility, and we're going to look at those when we talk about accessibility. This final button here is the toggle between what you see on the screen and the HTML version of that, and that runs in the background, which is how everything ends up looking the way it does. Most people don't need to mess around with the HTML. Feel free to kind of go in there if you need to, but no worries if you're not using that. Coming on down, we have appearance. So we have option to display the page name, the description, and the last date modified. So if you don't want that date modified, you can actually untick that. Common module settings, restrict access, activity completion, tags, and competencies will show up on every activity that we build or resource for the most part. Common module setting is going to be 3 options. If you only see 2 on your site, you need to have your admin enable the stealth option, which is what the last one is. We'll talk about that. So I can show it, I can hide it, or I can make it available but not shown on the course page, which is stealth, like it's there, but you can't see it. Why would I ever do that? We're going to talk about it in a minute when we talk about how do we make put lots of content in the course and make it look like there's not a whole lot there. Restrict access. I touched on this a little at the very beginning when we started with this. We talked about, using this. So I am able to restrict access to any activity or resource, or even a topic or a week in a course based off of any number of things. So I can start to create workflows for my learners. I can say, in order to access this activity, you have to have completed the one before it. I can say that you can't get into this activity until a certain date. Prior to that, no go. I can say that you need a grade. I can choose something in your user profile field and say, if that profile field doesn't match this, then you can't access this. Or a restriction set, which is a combination of any one of these. If I had built out, usually group is on here. So I have groups built out, and usually I expect to see group as an option here. So usually I am able to restrict access to things just based on group. Not sure why that's not showing up, because I did use it. Maybe I didn't use it on this site. That's an option. I may not have put you all in groups yet, but group would be an option too. If I choose something like activity completion, I can say that someone has to have completed the previous activity or select a certain activity I want them to complete. So that's great, but how did I set that part up? So activity completion really should actually, in my opinion, be before restrict access, but that's just my little way of navigating through. If I want to set activity completion on something, I need to come down here to the activity completion option. This will vary based on the type of resource or activity. So for example, I can require on certain activities that someone has a passing grade, and then I can set what the passing grade is. I can require in lesson that people have spent a minimum amount of time in that lesson. But here on a page, I have limited options, and that is because this is that resource. So it's just information. So I really can't track a whole lot. So I have 3 options. No activity completions. Like if you're using a label just to kind of break things up, you don't need activity completion for that. In this one, I have the option of the students mark it off as complete. So maybe it's not a required thing and they can tick it off if they want to. Or when the activity complete when conditions are met. This is the piece that will vary, is the conditions. For a page, your only option is that someone has to view it, because there really isn't anything else they can do with it. Setting my expected complete on date really just means that when I look at my reporting, it will tell me if people completed this when I expected them to or late. And then we're back to those tags, which we talked about a minute ago. Competencies I won't get into. They're a much larger conversation. But if you are using competencies on your site, this is where you'll link the competency to the particular activity. If you're not, or when you want to know more about competencies, definitely hit up your Moodle docs to read more about competencies to get an idea about what they are. When we're done, we can choose to save and display. And this is going to take us back to the page where we can see everything that we put on there. And this is how it looks for our learner. Things that I really like about some of the navigation here is I can actually have folks navigate to the previous activity or the next. So they're already in here, they can actually navigate around. So that is creating the page activity. We're going to jump in and start creating assignments and forums here in just a minute, and we'll touch on lesson. But we've already been going for an hour, so I do want to take a break, give everyone a chance to get up and stretch, and we will meet back here in 9 minutes, which is 4:10 p.m. for me out on the East Coast and 2:10 p.m. Mountain Time. I will stick around. So if in that time you have any questions, feel free to hang out here and ask them. Otherwise, I'll see you all back here in 10 minutes.
Hey, Amy. This is Dylan Conway. I just have a quick question for you because, I mean, I'm kind of like an in-betweener. I'm not brand new to Moodle, but I'm not like, a veteran by any means. Is there any way, like any resources that you can like guide me to on like setting groups for people so that it automatically like puts them into things so I'm not sorting them myself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a resource I can pull over. Actually, that's in part an admin piece. So there is a plugin that allows people to select their own groups and puts them in that way. However, if you are also uploading your users, so like if you're the person putting the users in, you can assign them to groups using a CSV. So we can upload
Okay.
the users and do it that way. I will post that template into this course. And I just made a video tutorial for that last night for another course. So I'll put it in here. You'll see it later on today. So I'll add that so that you have it, and that will show you
Oh,
how to do
thank
all
you.
that.
You're the
You're welcome.
best. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Let me make a note of that so I don't forget.
Hey, Amy, it's Hart. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. How are you? Are you keeping cool out there?
Doing what I can. So, would you like me to field some questions while you take a break?
Sure, that would be great because I now suddenly hear my children starting to like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Awesome. If you all don't know Hart is like a Moodle guru. She is amazing. I've known Hart for a couple of years now, and she can answer any questions you might have. I'll be back in just a minute or two.
So, Dylan, you're going to love the group choice plugin if you can get it.
Yes, that's like my biggest thing right now because we have a ton of new hires and I am the admin and we just started kind of expanding on this whole training. Nobody's done it for our division yet. So working with it, it's a lot of people and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could just, have them broken apart, this would make my life so much easier. So I was like, I'm gonna ask because there has to be an easier way than what I'm doing.
There is definitely an easier way. And an upload file, if you're an admin, is really easy, but the group choice plugin is great because basically you create the groups and then you create a group choice activity in your course and people come in and just choose their group. And then within the course, what's really great about it is you can set things up so that only people in a particular group can access a particular section, or you can set it up so that everything in the course is hidden until they make that choice, so that they have to get into their group before they can do anything else.
Oh, okay. That'd be super nice because I feel bad because I'm like, everybody is in the same right now. And so like people who have been here for 20 years, they are going through and clicking on stuff that they obviously already know. And then we have new people who are like just not clicking on anything that they need to click on. And I'm like, okay, like I gotta just figure this out.
Yeah. And some of that you can do with your course structure, right? So that you can have things in a section for newbies, and then you can have updates for people that have been there for a while.
Yeah. So I'm gonna definitely, do that and make sure to put some restrictions on there for the newbies because they like to, blow right through it and then they're asking questions and I'm like, well, if you actually read that, you'd know, but
Yeah, it's challenging to get people to read anything.
yes, it is.
So if you just kind of lead them down a path. So if your site has stealth activities, when you create an item, one of your options is to create it so that it is available but not shown on the.
Okay.
Have you seen that option in any of your
I think I have. I
Yeah.
just haven't used it.
So, yeah, so what it does is it allows you to set things up with activity completion. You can basically say, okay, I have this thing, it's available, but nobody can see it. And then you can use restrict access so that you can say, this is shown when something happens.
Okay, so kind of a
Or you-
condition of they got to
Yeah.
do this to have it open. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, or you can link to it when something happens so that this happens, or you can just do restrict access. Actually, with Stealth, you can just use a straight restrict access so that you hide it until something happens. So if they complete something, you can use it sort of like an Easter egg. They get a woohoo, you did that kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool.
So restrict access will do that for you. You just have to close the little eyeball next to the restrict access settings. And
Okay. Okay.
that keeps it hidden completely. Nobody knows it's there except for you until they do whatever it is they need to do.
That's perfect.
Yeah, and you can restrict access by groups too. So you can, this is just for this group, this is just for that group.
Yeah, and that's the part I really want to do because, like I said, I want to make sure the newbies actually do what they need to do.
Mhm, mhm.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's easy. Groups is something I really love working with because it's very versatile and very powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. I love groups.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome. Yeah, and it's groups are awesome. However, if you have a Microsoft Teams integration, then it gets a little, then it gets all kind of crazy. But if you're not using the Microsoft Teams integration, I am a huge fan of groups. I use them for everything. So, like when I create courses. So when I run courses through the Academy, I often have people who join me who are actually using different products. So I want to show people on like a course site what that looks like on their site. People on an open LMS work site need to see what it looks like on their site because they look just a little bit different. And just having those differences can be a bit. So I can actually create the same content for the two different groups and then just limit access by group. But not only do I limit access, I limit visibility. So if I come in and I'm using a course site, I don't even see that the activities exist for the other group of people who are in the course. So now everything is very tailored to me as a learner, and I'm not seeing all this extra stuff on the course page. Yeah, and I know Hart uses groups all the time. Big fan of groups.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
Yeah,
it sort
no,
of
I
was
just
like-
kind of briefly heard it. One of the guys in our department, he mentioned that he used them and he didn't go into a ton of detail, but he was talking about how much he loves them. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out the grouping. Like, I'm just going to make that my goal.
Let's look at it right as we jump back in. It's
right.
4:09. I know people will come in the next minute or so, but I just can't stop talking about Moodle. So we're just going to jump in and I'll show you groups. I'm on the participants page. I got here from the nav drawer. And Hart, thank you so much for fielding questions so I could get up.
Oh, happy to do it. I'm going to step back out again.
All right, thank you. So I'm here on the participants page. Hart has posted in the chat her basically knowledge base type article from SOU, which is where Hart is the Moodle guru at SOU. And if you read this, you can read more about setting up groups. But we start this right from the participants page. And how you get there is to click that cog in the upper right-hand corner. This cog has all of your main functionality for things. And the functionality can be specific to the page you're on or to the course as a whole. So here I can see my enrollment methods. We will not get into that today, but there are groups. And if I just click on groups, I'm going to come to the page to create groups. So here I am. Now I just create a group. Pretty easy. And I can give it a name. My tip here on groups is to give a very nondescript name. So we can actually create user overrides on different activities. So like if I need to give someone extra time on a quiz, I can create a user override based off the user or the group. But I don't want to call that group like accommodations or extra time, right? Like, because other people can sometimes see that the group is there on the page. So give your groups a nondescript name. So We'll go with Beartooth, which is one of the mountain ranges out there in Montana. So there's the Beartooth. This is a really cool feature about groups right here, group messaging. I love this feature, and here's why. I like to create group things that people are doing, so assignments or presentations, and I do them right through Moodle. But I want that group to have a group chat where they can actually message each other. And the way that that happens is for me to set group messaging to yes. Now, when they're using their messaging feature, they'll see groups as an option there, and they will be able to group message. And that is a really nice feature for them to have. I can add a picture for the group if I want to, and then I'm done. I just click Save Changes. Usually what I do is I create out all of the shells for my groups, and then I go through and I add my members. If I need to add them individually, like they're already enrolled in the course, I'll need to add them individually. So I can add or remove users. And when I click that, my whole user group here is going to come up. And so you'll see that there's different people. And so I can just start to highlight different people. We'll add Anita there. Hey, Anita. We can add all the people that we want there into our group. And when we're ready, just click add and it'll move all those people we highlighted over. And now they're there in this group. And that's my way that I like to create groups. So this is where you do that right here from the page. Now, when we looked at our restrict access options, we'll see groups as an option, and we'll look at that in our next thing. The other thing to know about here, so I'm here in groups, I'm going to go back out to the groups page because I have some other options. There's groupings. Groupings is a group of groups. So sometimes I might break groups down into very small things, like maybe there's only 3 people in my groups ABC. But later on, I need to combine them into a larger group because we have a different type of project. And I want to take groups A and B and make them one. I can create a grouping that contains just groups A and B. So now I can have my small individual groups, or I can combine them into larger groupings. And those groupings are really helpful to use. But just know that that's what the difference is there. Let's see. Other thing is the overview. So when I go to the overview tab, I'm able to look here and see which groups do I have, who's in them, who is not assigned to a group. I can actually see that right here and see who is not assigned to a group yet. So if I need to look around, I'm able to see that right there. I can filter by groups and groupings if I want to. So now when I'm back out in my course, if I create my next assignment, I can actually limit that based off of groups as well. So I can say, you cannot access this thing unless you're in this group. Great way to filter for both if I have people who are new to something and I need them to do this like orientation bit, or if I want to start to differentiate some of this learning. So this is common in K-12, right? So I may have different text or different things for different groups of users. So I'll need to make sure that I am offering all of that in there, but I don't want my students to have to figure out which one is theirs or to see there's all these other options. I can set a restrict access by group. So let's look more at what that looks like. I'm just gonna mute for a second because I have to cough really quickly, and then we'll start. All right, too much talking today. Now let's create an assignment here. Under Let's Create, we're going to add an activity or resource. Am I still sharing? Yes. Okay. Add an assignment. And we're going to give this a name. So we're just going to call this assignment to make it easy. Give my assignment a description if I want. Often when I'm talking about something like an assignment or a forum, the instructions I need someone to follow, those will be put into the description. I don't necessarily put them on the course page, but I do have them available. So when they click into the assignment, they do see that. I can add additional files. So if I have a rubric or an article that I want someone to read, I can make sure that they're able to have access to it by adding it here as a file that's attached to this assignment. Availability is pretty unique to assignments in the sense that I can limit when people are allowed to make submissions to this assignment. So they can come in and they can see the instructions, but they can't submit anything until the date and time that I say so. Due date is when this is supposed to be due. And this is helpful when I'm looking at my grader interface because I can see who has submitted late and who submitted on time. Setting a due date doesn't prevent anyone from submitting after that due date, but setting a cutoff date does. The cutoff date is the last time that someone can submit something. So maybe I have it due on Monday, but I give a little grace period. You're going to lose 5 points a day for each day that something's late, but Friday is the last day you can really submit it. After that, it's just a 0. I can set that here. So I might say, 7 days after that, I'll come out to the 28th. All right. I also have the option of remind me to grade by, and this is for me as the teacher. This will tell me, give me a little reminder that I need to finish something up. I can choose my submission types. You may have more or less on your site, but generally we have online text and the option for file submissions. File submissions is when someone is uploading a file, like a Word document or a PDF. Online text is when they're typing into a text box. We can give a maximum number of uploaded files here. And we have the maximum submission size. Now, remember we talked about the maximum file size. This is based on that. I can also limit the file types. And I find that I sometimes have to do this when I have Mac users who try to submit a Pages file to me, because unless I'm a Mac user, I can't open a Pages file. So if I click in here, I can actually set the file types that are allowed. So I can say it can be a doc file, a PDF, and maybe I'll take a Google Doc as well. So if you do run into this where you have Mac users who say, like, I have Pages and I don't have Microsoft on my computer, your advice to them is that's fine. You can do a save as and save your Pages document as a PDF and submit that. But also, if you limit the file extension types that can be submitted here, then you can actually just like cut out that whole problem where you are chasing people down to get them to resubmit in a file that you can open. Under feedback types here, I can choose the type of feedback that's going out to my learner. In assignment, you have a lot of options here. You have comments, annotate PDF, which is when you go into grading, the assignment that was submitted shows up in a screen to the left where you can actually mark that up. And then you have your feedback comments and things on the right. Offline grading worksheet, which can only be used if when we get down to our grade, we're using simple direct grading. It won't work with those advanced grading options. And then feedback files. I really like feedback files when I'm talking about lengthy submissions or something where I need to give direct feedback on that file. So if I have someone submitting a long paper, a final paper, I like to be able to take that paper, mark up the paper with my track changes, leave comments on it, and submit that marked up version back to them. I can only do that if I enable feedback files. I also have the option here to comment inline. And what that does is takes the whole submission, drops it into your feedback comments box, and then you can make comments that way. It's a nice feature, but it is very messy if you're talking about lengthy submissions. Under submission settings, we can require students to click the submit button. I always put this on yes, and the reason I do is because otherwise when someone uploads something, it will auto submit. If I set this to yes and they don't click submit, it will sit there as a draft, but it does prevent students from like having to contact me because they uploaded the wrong document. We can also have a submission statement. This is set on the site level by your admin, and students can have to accept that statement before they're allowed to submit. Most times this is an academic integrity statement, but you can only have one per site. So once it's set everywhere. And it applies here to assignments. Additional attempts. Now I have some other options here. I can say they're never getting another attempt. Manual means I, as the teacher, can go back in and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to reopen this so you can resubmit, or automatically until pass. That particular attempt option depends on the grade piece. So we'll look at that in just a second. Now, let's say I have a group project and I want my group to submit. Like I want, we're talking about doing groups, right? So I want people to submit as groups. And, Dylan was talking about having group things, and I've created this group project and I say, okay, here's the deal. It's a group project. You'll submit as a group. I would switch this to yes. And then I'm going to get another option. I can require the group to make a submission. So if I say yes, I want group Beartooth to make a submission, I can set that here. I can require that I can also require that all group members submit. So even though it was a group activity, instead of one submission per group, I want everybody to submit something. You have that option too. And then if you're using the grouping for groups, you would set that here, and it would be based off of the groupings that you set up over on the participants page. So that's just for group submissions. If you're not submitting in groups, keep that set to no. Notifications. This is a fun one. So I can be notified when people submit things. Now, do I really want that? Maybe, maybe not. But I do like to know when people submit late, because if I've already gone through and graded things, then I want to know if something came in, right? Because I don't want to miss it. So I can switch that to yes. This one right here, default setting for notify students, that tells students when you have graded them. So once you've done that grade, they'll automatically get a notification. This is nice and handy for them to have. It's not handy when you are sending out notifications and they're sitting in another class and they now are all checking their notifications. But what are you going to do about that? There's not much you can do there. Grade is that piece I said we would come back to. So here we go. There are lots of options for grade. So this particular site is set up that these are defaulting to a type of, to the grade type of point, which is probably one of the more common. You can also set something up to have no grade. And so you might be thinking like, why would I ever have an assignment that doesn't have a grade associated with it? Here's why. I like to, when I create a syllabus, have a signature page, a document that people fill out they sign it and they understand that the syllabus is a contract between us. So I make them submit that signature page to me and I collect it, because then if there's ever an issue, I can say, remember, this was a contract between you and I. Or sometimes people need to submit forms for something. They've gone to an observation. They need to submit that back. There's not a grade. I just need the form. I might set my assignment to none and make this just a Dropbox where people can submit things to us. But if I do need a grade, my two options are scale and point. Scales are set up on the site level. On this site, there's a default competence scale and separate and connected ways of knowing. There's a BTEC scale. There's lots of scales out there. I would say the most frequently used is point, though. So let's look at points. Now, points is pretty much how we operate, right? Like, what did I get on this? I got a 75 out of 100. That's what we're talking about here with points. But I can set the maximum grade. So if I have an assignment that isn't worth 100 points total, it's only worth 50 points, and I'm really stuck, or I have an instructor that I'm helping who's really dug in on this assignment's only worth 50 points, you can change the maximum grade here. What the learner sees is going to depend on how we do some grade book setup, which hopefully we're going to get to in a little bit here. But my grading method. Now, remember I said if you're using an offline grading worksheet, you can only use simple direct grading. And what that is you basically download everything. You have this grading worksheet that you're using. You're offline. You've got all their stuff, all their assignments downloaded to your computer, and you're filling out this grading worksheet. And then when you're done, you upload it all and it populates their grades. This only works with simple direct grading. It doesn't work with advanced grading methods. So what are our advanced grading methods? We have the grading guide, which is sometimes also called marking guide, and a rubric. So we can create either a grading guide or a rubric here on the site and use that to grade assignments. We can also use those in forum. Those are the only two that have advanced grading options. Now, if you're not familiar with the difference between rubric and grading guide, this is the basic difference. The rubric is each level of achievement on the rubric has a very specific point value associated with it. So if I have 4 levels and they are 0 points, 2 points, 4 points, 8 points, those are the only points you can get. I can only click into one of those levels of achievement for each criterion. Those are the points you're going to get. Grading guide means that I can put the criterion and the maximum grade. So if on my APA formatting criterion, if someone's writing a paper, on my APA formatting criterion, the most points you can get is 8. With a grading guide, I can assign you any point value between 0 and 8, including fractionated points. So now if you're somewhere in between, I can actually make that happen with grading guide. Grading Guide also has another really nice feature, super big time saver, where I can pre-populate my most frequently used comments and then pick them from a dropdown and will automatically put them into the feedback comment box. And then I can just customize them as I need. So, we have some of those things we say pretty frequently, especially if we're teaching. We might be saying things like, this is an excellent opening statement, or, you totally didn't format this thing and there's literally no APA going on here, probably in a nicer way. But you have those common things that you say. Check references. Now you can put them into a drop down. So as you go through and grade your 25, 30 people, you can start picking from this drop down of frequently used comments, customize them as you'd like, and you didn't have to type that out every time. You didn't have to copy and paste it in. So those are your two advanced grading methods, Grading Guide and Rubric, both of which can be used in assignment and in forum. Up above, we said that attempts piece, we can continue to have this assignment reopen for people until they've hit the passing grade if we'd like. So if I really need people, I really want to give people another chance. I've got something here. If 80 is the passing grade, and I want people to have another attempt if they didn't get an 80. I put the grade to pass in here. And then we'll look at some of the attempt options up above. Let's look at that. Let's go back up here to, where did they go? Probably up higher. Okay. Availability, submission. I have to find it again. All right. So I can set that grade to pass, and I can set my attempts to reopen based off of that grade. So if someone doesn't get an 80, this will automatically reopen. I can determine how many times they get to resubmit. So if it's, you have to get an 80, and I'm going to give you one opportunity after I've graded this to take my feedback, revise it, and resubmit, I can set the maximum number of attempts to 2, meaning that first one, and then one more after the 80. Blind grading means that I do not see the identity of the students. This can be helpful if you have multiple instructors or TAs helping you in a course or something like that. We can set blind grading so they're only seeing the content and not the name of the student. Or if you want to challenge yourself and you want to say, I want to make sure that I'm being completely unbiased and equitable and fair in my grading, I want to set it to blind grading. So I don't know who I'm grading. I'm only looking at the content. You can do that. You can hide the grader identity from the students. So they'll still get their grade, but they don't know who graded it. Helpful, again, if you're using TAs, because historically, sometimes if there are different graders, students say things like, well, so-and-so grades so much easier than this other person, right? And we can also use a grading workflow. The grading workflow is kind of neat. I can create a workflow whereby maybe my TA grades it, and then I check it, and then I can stage it for release, and I can release all the grades all at one time. And that's a nice way to do that workflow. There are other ways to do timed release of grades so that the grades appear for everybody at the exact same time. We can look at that when we get to gradebook. I'm just going to pause for a quick second. All right. Next, we have our common module settings, which I said is going to be the same from activity to activity or resource to resource. I have that option for show on the course page, hide, or the stealth activity where this exists on that course page, but you don't see it there. I can set my group modes here. And if I want to give this assignment an ID number, I can do that. Restrict access. Now, we've created a group here. So when we add our access restrictions, we now see that group is an option. So if I only want my folks in Beartooth to be able to access this particular thing, I create an access restriction, choose group, and I say they must match this group. Now, see this little eyeball right here? If I leave the eyeball open, it means that everyone in the course can see that this activity exists, but they can see that they can't get into it unless they're in the Beartooth group. If I, what we call poke the eye, so if I click on the eye, you'll see it gets a slash through it. And what that means is that unless you are in the Beartooth group, you don't even see that this exists in this course. You as a teacher will see it, but no other students will be able to see it unless they're in the Beartooth group. This is how we start to create that really customized, individualized experience for learners when we need to have a variety of different things in the course targeted to different groups or different learners. We're able to do that using access restriction. Closing that eye means that people don't see it. You have that option for any of the access restrictions. So again, I can make it so that you don't even see this exists until you complete the previous activity, or on a certain date, suddenly it appears. A grade, a profile, or the restriction set. So I can say, not only does this not appear until a certain date, it also doesn't appear until you've completed the previous activity. So just because it becomes available on July 14th, if you didn't complete the Getting to Know You forum and it's not July 14th, you won't see this. I have the option to, under restriction sets, to set up ands or ors, meaning all of the pieces apply or one or the other applies. One other thing to point out is up here, you'll see there's a drop down where it says student must. We can also say must not. So maybe you don't get to come in here unless you, if you don't match a certain group. So like you can't be in Beartooth to see this. So you have that option of must or must not. Activity completion. Let's take a peek because it looks a little bit different for assignment. So we're gonna click on this, come down to when conditions are met. And here we can choose that they have to view it, receive a grade, and submit. Now, every so often, we'll see where there's like a little hang up in Moodle, and Moodle gets a little stuck if we have something like must view and submit both checked. For some reason, activity completion doesn't trigger. And my thought process on that is you can't actually submit to this activity unless you have viewed the activity. So I always pick the most stringent option, and that's the one I go with. So if I just want people to submit for it to mark complete, then that's it. I can also choose that not only do they have to submit, they have to get a grade back from me for this to complete. That's up to you. And you'll see that there's a question mark here, which gives you more information. So that's basically that. My expected complete on date, remember that's just for my reporting, tags, and competencies. I will have to enter a description or something up here. Let's see. We'll just put something in. There you go. And I might even attach that signature page so people can grab it. When I'm all done, I can click the Save and Display. This will show me what things are looking like. And here I am. Now, remember we talked just a minute ago about rubric and marking guide. Now, let's say I had set those and I said it was rubric or marking guide. When I click to Save and Display, I would have automatically been routed to the page to set those up. If I wasn't ready to, no problem, totally cool. We can come back to it. So let's say I did that, but I wasn't ready to do my rubric yet. Come back on Monday, and now I'm ready to put my rubric in. If I'm in the assignment and I click that cog, down here I have advanced grading. So when I tick advanced grading, I can come in and I can change my grading method if I want. So maybe I was like, yeah, I'm going to do simple direct. And then I thought, no, you know what? I have a great rubric that relates to this. I'll use it. I can click rubric and the page will reload. I can define a new grading rubric from scratch. So if I don't have one, but if there's one that already exists on the site, I can actually pull that in as a template. I'll click, I'm not sure there are any. Nope, nobody has templates back here yet. All right. So if I want to create one myself, I think that the rubric lays out really nicely. I could click to define it from scratch. And what you're going to see is I can give my rubric a title. I can give a description. So maybe I have the description of how that rubric works, what the grading expectations are. And then here I can add the criterion. You can tell I'm in school because APA formatting is always at the top of my mind. And then I can put in the level of achievement here. So I can say none. I can click in here, 1 to 3 errors. I don't know why, but I'm hopping all over the place here. So I can put in all of my criterion. I can add additional criterion. I can add more levels. So if I have more than 3 levels, I can do that. I can change the point values that are associated with everything. And I can change how that rubric displays. So I do want it in ascending order, descending order. And then I have all of these options. And when I'm ready, I can just click to save it and make it ready, or save it as a draft. So I want to keep coming back and editing it. I can do that as a draft and come back. When I'm ready to use it, I just click save and make ready. So that's how you set up a rubric. Now, if I wanted to go back out to advanced grading and use a marking guide, it's going to be set up very similarly. Let's pick from the drop down here and go to grading guide. All right. Now, same thing, I'll need to define or use the template. So if I do so, I give it a name. The same with the description, but in still defaulting to rubric. Hold on. For some reason, I keep bouncing around here on the page reload. All right. So I did pick grading guide, and for whatever reason, it's not taking. But what you'll do is you'll see something very similar, but instead of having that grid laid out the way we did, you'll see one place to put your criterion in. You can put some guidance for students, some guidance for your graders, and then you have the option to put the maximum points for that particular level. And you just do that for each criterion. You won't have all the individual levels. You'll only have the criterion. And that is how grading guide would work. Any questions that I can answer that you might have about those advanced grading methods? All right, super quiet. Okay, so we'll skip over that. We're not able to get that grading guide to load. If I am, and I think I might actually have that, if I don't have it in a tutorial in the course already, I'll double check on that and see if I can get one up there for you for grading guide. All right. Okay, so let's come back out here to our Let's Create. We have looked so far at creating a page, creating an assignment, and probably the most frequently used thing is forums. So let's take a look at that. Forums do a little bit of dual duty, right? So we can use forums as a way to make announcements, which we have in this course, or we can try to use them to engage our learners in conversation. Now, I know anyone who's been teaching using online platforms or trying to get people to engage in conversation, even face-to-face, it is not easy. People often don't want to engage in that conversation, right? So we're just kind of, when we're in the classroom, we're just sort of standing there trying to get them to talk. But in a forum, part of getting people to talk is making sure that we give them enough time, we give them enough autonomy to be able to answer something in a way that works for them. So one of the things I like about forum is it starts to create equity within the course. When I'm teaching a face-to-face course, as I sometimes do as an adjunct, one of the things I'm up against is time. So I don't have a lot of time for people to ask questions and answers, right? So maybe everyone has a strong opinion on something. I can only really call on 2 or 3 people. Forum removes that barrier. Everyone has an opportunity to say their piece in a forum. Even if they're sort of reiterating what someone else said, they'll tell you how we can make sure that those ideas are unique. That's one of the things I really like about forums. And when I think about how to engage my learners and how to make forums effective, that's one of the things I share up front in my courses. Forum gives everyone a voice. You won't always have a voice in a face-to-face course because of time, but you do in a forum. A couple of tips before you start to use forums: make sure that you have a netiquette and etiquette policy clearly posted and acknowledged by all of your learners in your course. One of the things to keep in mind is that people can get very emotional behind the keyboard. They are more willing to share their opinions, even if they are very abrasive. And so we want to take that piece out of it because this is a learning environment. The environment should be a place where people can come and very safely share their thoughts on something without attacking or feeling attacked. So I always try to make sure that there is a netiquette policy in a forum expectations policy in my syllabus so that we can go over it. So when we create a forum, the description is what people are going to see when they come into that forum. So this tells them basically what to do. And if I come out to our course again, get on down here, I have a forum, an icebreaker forum, and I am not a fan of a lot of the icebreakers because they ask things like, what's your favorite color or what animal do you identify with? And those are like the two questions that I can never think of an answer for. So if you're using an icebreaker, try to go with something more creative and less widely used. And so in this particular icebreaker, I chose here, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? What's your favorite recipe to cook? Or what's the one book you would recommend for someone? And I read one, it was Zach's intro, and he recommended Watership Down. I haven't gotten through everybody's yet, as you can see. And in mine, I gave a recipe that I like to make with the links out to the recipe. Why did I choose this? Because you know what? We're all Moodlers. We all kind of work in the same industry. You have answered that question 100 times. You answered it in the Moodle forum. I want to create an environment where we just kind of come in and we learn something from each other. And that's what my icebreaker is. So now you can start to see that there are different ways to engage people in these forums. Once we've created our forum, we have to make a decision about the forum type. So there are a couple here. There's a single simple discussion, which is one discussion goes in and everyone replies to that. Each person posts one discussion. That's it. You post your discussion and that's all. There's no responses. A Q&A forum, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite forums, which I'm going to save for the end here to talk about. Standard forum, where everyone can post an actual discussion forum and they can reply to one another. We can look at that in a blog format or standard. The Q&A forum is I really like because it ensures that my learners have to craft their own response. They can't come in and start harvesting information from someone else's post. And here's why. With the Q&A forum, I, the teacher, have to make the first forum post. Students have to reply to my post before they can see anyone else's post. And there's a waiting period. So on my sites, I have a 30-minute delay. So there's 30 minutes from when a forum post is made to when it becomes finalized. You have 30 minutes to edit. In that 30 minutes, after let's say Solange responds to me, for 30 minutes, Solange can't see anyone else's responses to my forum post. That means she can't go through and grab stuff from, Rochelle or Gina or Kent and say, oh, look, they had all this information. Now I'm going to go back and edit my forum because I can see their stuff. You have to have created your own forum post before you can see anyone else's. Yes, busted. So this ensures that people are coming up with their own thoughts. I really like the Q&A forum for things where I'm trying to elicit the amount of knowledge or comprehension that my learners have about something. I don't use the Q&A forum when I'm just trying to engage people in conversation. When maybe I'm putting something out and I want them to kind of give their opinion about it or tell me, what your favorite thing we read this week was, or what was the most important thing you learned. For those things, it doesn't matter to me if they've seen someone else's post. But when I really want to know that they are able to explain themselves and explain their knowledge and comprehension, I like the Q&A forum. Availability, similar to everything else, we can have a due date and a cutoff date. Attachments and word count, you know that this is a really, really popular thing. Here's your forum post, and it has to be 250 words. If I want to have a word count for people, definitely display that word count so they see it. Subscription and tracking is, are people notified about those forum posts? And so one of the things you'll notice here is that I can see which things I am subscribed to. My green button, this is toggled on. I can see the replies to different things as well, but I'm also able to choose the subscription. So things like the announcement forum are a forced subscription that people cannot unsubscribe from. But auto subscription means that once I've responded to the forum, I'm automatically subscribed. I can undo that. Maybe I don't want people to be subscribed. I don't want them to get notifications. Or optional, meaning they can opt in or out. Read tracking is either optional or off. And so if it's optional, I'm able to see which things I've read and which I haven't. Discussion locking is pretty cool. So sometimes we create a discussion forum and like everybody's moved on, and then all of a sudden somebody shows up and decides they're going to post in the forum from 2 weeks ago. And then they're upset that they didn't get feedback or no one is responding to them, or everyone goes back and they're focused in this forum that we've moved on from. We can lock those forums. We can say if a week goes by and no one has responded, the forum is locked, and I as the teacher am the only one who can unlock it. This means that now We don't have stragglers going back in and starting new conversation in a forum we've all moved on from. Post threshold for blocking, it always makes me laugh a little. I think this is a really optimistic thing to have here. And basically what this is if someone posts too many times in a forum, we can block them for a certain period of time from posting anymore. I have never really run into this problem, but every so often you do have that student who really starts to overtake. They start responding to everyone, and it can really derail the conversation if you have one person who's doing all of the responding. I can say that people will be blocked for 2 days if they have posted more than 10 posts in one day or whatever I want. And I can give them a warning too that says, like, once they hit 5, it's going to tell them you've got a warning now. Like, if you post 5 more times, you're done for 2 days. So if you ever run into the case where you have people who are just constantly responding and you want to like shut it down a little, you can use this post threshold for blocking. I think it's a nice feature, especially if you get that one random student who just really starts to take over that conversation. And Diane said she had that student last year. I think I have had one student who was like that in my, almost a long time of teaching. I won't date myself, but I've been teaching for a long time. I've had 1 or 2 students who were like that, and it would have been helpful to have this because it really can derail that conversation and it makes people less likely to speak up. All right. The grading thing, whole forum grading. So this is where we have that option for none, scale, or point. We have the option 2 under grading method for simple, grading guide, or rubric. One thing I'm going to tell you that's kind of a bug in Moodle is I've got my course. I had some students who dropped. I suspended them. They're not active in the course anymore. They will still show up in the grading area under whole forum grading. It is a bug. It's been reported. We're hoping that it'll get fixed. It's the only place in Moodle where that continues to happen, where those suspended users still show up in the grading interface, and you actually have to skip over them so that you're not grading people who are not even in the course anymore. So just know that if you run into that, you will, if you run into that is a bug. Feel free to head over to the Moodle tracker if you've never been there. Google Moodle tracker. You can register an account, but you can look at all the different tracker items so you know if something's a bug, and you can vote things up. I mean, obviously, from a development standpoint, it only makes sense to really fix the bugs that are things that widely affect people. So the more votes a bug gets, the more likely you are to see some action on that. So hopefully we'll see some action on that one. But if you ever run into that, that's why. The grade category is the category in the grade book. So we haven't gotten a grade book yet. I'm hoping we will because we are actually starting to run low on time already. Grade to pass, same as an assignment. Default setting to notify the students, same as an assignment. I can also use rating. So I can rate these different forums. Depending on the permissions on your site, you may have it set up where students are able to rate each other's forum posts. Double-edged sword, right? Like, so sometimes they want to rate their friends as doing like really great, even if it wasn't a great forum post. Sometimes they're harsh graders. One of the things to keep in mind, if we want students to rate one another or grade one another in something like, say, the workshop activity, the part about that we have to own is that we actually have to teach them how to rate one another and what meaningful feedback looks like. Otherwise, those ratings don't really mean much to the people receiving them or giving them. So that's just my little blurb on that, but you do have that ability if that's a permission on your site. Again, we have that grade category and the grade to pass under ratings as well. Common module settings, same as everywhere else. Restrict access, same as everywhere else. Activity completion will be a bit different here. We'll click the drop down, and the conditions available here include you have to have had a grade. You have to require a number of posts. Now, posts is the combination of discussions and replies. So if I need someone to create one discussion and do 2 replies, I'll want to indicate that here as opposed to using a 1 required post, because then they end up not having to reply. This is how completion will get checked off. Then we have tags and we have competencies. So now we can save that one and head on out to the course, and we'll have that forum on our page now. Okay, looks like we had a little issue here with our theming getting wiped out. So as you can see, This is what it was looking like before, and this is what it's looking like right now. Looks like the theme got stripped out a little bit. We can also see some new blocks over here. Let's see what happens when we refresh this page. Every so often, this kind of happens. Not sure what's up. Could be a caching issue. Who knows? All right, so here we are. We're back in our course. Totally different theme now. Let's keep going. We have our blocks over here to the side. And all right. Moodle for new users. There we go. Yeah. So Hart, I'm so glad you brought that up. Hart mentioned in the chat just now that the site is no longer in debugging mode, and there's the theme, came right back. Yesterday I tried to do something and I got the error. I got a stack error, and then I clicked further and I got the full debugging, and I was like, oh, I have to remember to tell Ryan to shut debugging off. But looks like they're doing a little work there for a second, probably installing maybe a plugin or something, or who knows what. But here we are, back in our course. So now we have all of our things here set up, and you can see those restrictions here. This is restricted. I see this as the teacher unless you belong to Beartooth, and it's hidden otherwise. I also have the previous activity with completion has to be marked, but that is not hidden otherwise, right? And then my forum doesn't have any restrict access. So when I add those restrictions, I can see them on that course page. We talked a lot about activity completion, and you're probably wondering like, okay, I can see how it helps with restrict access, but what else? We actually have, there's a couple of things. So if I'm a student or a teacher here and I'm looking, I have these check boxes along the side. Let's turn our editing off to make it more clear. So here they are. These check boxes that are solid outline, those are things that the student can check off as complete themselves. Things that have the dotted line outline mean they have to meet criterion for that to register as complete. Now, I'm going to click that cog up here again, and I'm going to come down to more. Here, I'll scroll down to reports, and I can look at the activity completion report. This will give me every user in my course, and there's many of them, all of the activities that are here in the course, and as things are completed, I'll be able to see what people have completed. Now, one of the things you're going to note is like things kind of scale off the side. The scrolly bar is actually down here for this, which is kind of an odd design piece. But like if I'm looking here, I can see that people have come into and checked off different activities already. They're showing up with that blue check, meaning they have complete that activity. Every so often, when I'm doing an assignment, I have a student email me that assignment. I still grade it through Moodle. I can still go into the grading information, give them a grade. But maybe submission was the piece that triggered completion. And now I need to override it. So if I go up to Catherine here, let's say Catherine emailed me something. I can click in the box and choose, yes, I want to override that. And what's going to happen is I'm going to get a red outline, which is my indicator that I manually overrode this, and the check to show that this is complete. What you have now is a really nice visual overview of who's completed things and who hasn't. So now if a student is, coming to you and they're needing, some additional help or something, and you see, yes, they've completed everything, so I'm going to take them in this direction, or, well, they need more help because they haven't completed any of the activities, or you are managing a training group and you need to reach out to the department managers and say, these are the people who are where they need to be in the course. These are the people who haven't started or are not completing things. You can gather that information here from the activity report. You have the visual option, but you can also download this report in a spreadsheet or in an Excel CSV file as well. We're going to head on back out to the course here. The one thing I did want to show you before we kind of got too far was H5P. H5P, I don't know how many of you have used it. If you haven't, I encourage you to go to the website h5p.org. H5P is a free content authoring tool based on HTML5, but you don't need to know any HTML in order to use H5P. Because it's free, it can create similar experiences to things that people are doing with like SCORM packages, if you're familiar with those, but it's free. In Moodle versions 3.9 and above, H5P became a part of Moodle Core, which means that it's baked in and we no longer need a plugin anymore. You may still be on a newer version, 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, and be using the plugin. Perfectly okay. If you are hosted, if your site is hosted, your host may have some reasons that they're keeping people on one or the other, or they've given you the option to either Go with the core version and migrate things over to what's called the content bank, or stick with the plugin. Each has some different functionality associated with them. I am going to put up in this course an infographic that we have that is, you know, the H5P stuff, and it's like Moodle equivalent. So there are things that you can build out in H5P, or you can use a Moodle core equivalent. But I'll put that in after this. Let's talk about what H5P is. I am going to bring up another site here. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into our H5P course in our academy. I think that some of you on this call actually took that H5P creator course with us. So you may have already seen this. So let me get out here into my course and find that. I believe it's going to be in my past. There it is. All right. So I'm bringing this course up just so I can demo some of the different content types to you so you can see what they look like. For example, there are some different things you can do. You can create course presentations, which are really like a slide deck, but you can add lots of elements to them. You can create drag and drop activities. You can create something called interactive video, which is one of my very favorite tools. And the reason is, especially as we've been remote or hybrid, we are not face-to-face with people giving these lectures and these things, right? Like, so if somebody comes back and they watch this 3-hour video, more power to them, but I could never sit through 3 straight hours of a video. Also, even if my videos are shorter, what do I know as a teacher? Nobody's watching my lectures. I know it because their test scores aren't good. They're asking me questions that I'm covering in those videos. Interactive video lets me take the video I created and add interactions throughout. I have the option to pause the video, and it cannot play forward until the user interacts with whatever the thing is. Multiple choice question, they click to read more text, they perform an activity, and then it continues. I can also prevent activity completion from triggering until someone reaches the final completion slide on that video. So this helps me to ensure people are watching things, but it also helps to break that content up so that my learners aren't just sitting and passively watching my video. So we start to transition that video learning, those lectures, a lot of anything that we're building, from passive to active types of learning. And so that's what we can do with H5P. If I look at drag and drop content types, for example, and I'll demo through this and then I'll show you where we make it in the content bank. Hopefully there's going to be an H5P. I'm pretty sure that there may be an H5P session coming up this week. Go to it if you can. But here I am, I've got like all of my different information here. So I created this sequence activity. And so drag and drop, you can create a variety of different things. Like I can have a whole text block where people drag the correct words into the text. In this case, I wanted someone to sequence something. So I picked the Star Wars films just because, but they could be anything. So I think about this in terms of if I am responding to a hazardous waste spill, there are very specific steps and I need to take them in a certain order. Or if I am wildland firefighter, there are a sequence of events that I need to know about. Same thing with a lot of things, nursing, social work, all kinds of things. So I can create an activity where people have to put these steps in order. I drag my option over to the drop zone where it belongs. I can put it in. I hope I have these right. All right, when I'm done, I can click the check button down below and it will tell me which ones I had correct. You see that a green check comes up and the +1, so I know that I've gotten correct. I can also see my score at the bottom. That's one example of an activity that you can build. Some others, I won't show you interactive video because playing it causes like all kinds of feedback, but that's an example as well. You can see incredibly created, wonderful examples on the h5p.org website if you're curious to start thinking about how you might use this. Two that I really like are interactive book and branching scenario. So branching scenario, I can actually create a scenario, and it's a little bit like a choose your own adventure book where my learners have to make choices. The choice they make determines where they go in this scenario next. And so I can ensure that people know how to deal with an unfolding situation. Interactive book is a really neat option here where I can create a book, much like I use the Moodle book, but I'm able to add interactions to it. So here we have an interactive book demo that my colleague Michael created. It'll take a moment to load here, but interactive book lets me create basically an electronic book, and I can have questions and I can have pop-ups and all kinds of things that load with my interactive book. So as people are navigating through it, it reminds me a little bit of the pop-up books that kids have where they can lift the flap and see something. You can do something very similar with interactive book. It looks like it's not loading for me, so I'll skip over what it is, but there's a great interactive book over on the h5p.org website. All right, so now you've heard me rattle on about H5P. Clearly, I'm super excited about it and I really like it, but how do we use it and where do we use it? If you are using the plugin, you would add an activity or resource right from your course page, and that's how you're going to add that plugin and start building. If you are have the content bank going on your site, you are going to come to your navigation drawer and come down to content bank. On this particular theme, it looks like a bag with a handle. On most themes, it looks like a paintbrush. So let's click into here. This will take just a second to load. But here you can see that there are some H5P packages. I did bring some over with the course that I had. So they're kind of in here. We'll see if they function. Sometimes they don't when you bring them over and you have to download them again. But here it is. It's living in my content bank. Things I like about the content bank, I can like start working on an H5P, leave it here, come back to it, and it's not going to show up on my course page to my students, to my learners just yet. I'm able to categorize and see everything that I have in here. And when I'm ready to build something, I come into that content bank and I click add, and I'm going to get this drop down and you're going to see all of these content types. There are so many of them and they roll out new ones all the time. I encourage you to sign up for their email if you're interested in H5P, because they'll let you know when there's new releases of things. One that I like a lot, and it's pretty easy to set up, is dialogue cards. Dialogue cards function like an electronic flashcard. I can put information, images, whatever I want on them. And as someone looks at it, they can then click to flip it and see the answer on the back. So they make a great study tool. Also really effective when I'm teaching reading and sight words to a younger crowd. So I know that my kids had their 100 sight words that they had to know, I think at the end of first grade or something. And we were sent home flashcards. You can build those right here, right in Moodle using H5P. So I might put the word on the front and then an image of what it is on the back or something where people are able to see it. I can do math facts. I can do all types of things. One that I'm pretty fond of is I teach environmental science and I like to put up geographic formations. I put the image on the front and the answer of what it is on the back. You can see here, I can give a title to my activity. This will look the same from activity type to activity type. H5P depends very heavily on basically templating throughout. So once you learn how to do one type of activity, it becomes very easy to create the others. I can give it a heading. I have my mode here. This is specific to dialogue cards. I can do them normal, or I can repeat back through the deck if I want. I can give a description so I can tell people what I want them to do with it. And then here's the dialogue. So here's my, my question. All right, there's the front. The back is going to be blue for hopefully most of us. If I want to add more cards, I just click to add dialogue and I get a new card. And you'll see that I get a long list here, a bit of a table of contents, if you will, of all of the cards that I'm creating. I'm adding images. I have the option to add alt text for my images. I can add the image here. I can even add an audio file. So if when I have someone looking at a word, I can actually be adding an audio file of me pronouncing the word. Again, really helpful for literacy. Also super helpful when we're talking about learning a world language. So if I am teaching world language and I want people to not only see the word, but to hear the appropriate pronunciation, I can add myself saying that. Later, I can use something really cool called a speak the word set, where I give them the word, the learner speaks it, it's recorded into H5P, and it tells them if they have pronounced the word correctly or not. So you can now start to pair together these different activities to create a really cool learning experience where first someone's introduced, then they practice and they hear pronunciation, and later they go and pronounce things That's just one example of ways that we can use H5P. I would avoid the text overrides and translations, and you can take a peek at behavioral settings here. This will be a little bit different from activity to activity. But once you're done, you just click save, and it's going to put this right into your content bank. And then it's there. If you need to edit it, you can just click on it, and then you can edit. Here I have what color is the sky, and it will flip over and it will tell me the sky is blue. So all of your H5P content, if you have the content bank, can be built out here in the content bank. But all right, I've built it here. What's next? Now we need to add it to the course. So let's look at how we do that. This only is applicable if you're building in the content bank. If you're building in the plugin, it's out here on the course page anyway. Let's turn our editing back on here. And we're going to add an activity or resource, and we're going to choose H5P from the activity chooser. So here we are, add an activity or resource. We'll let that load, H5P. All right, we're going to give it a name. The name can be the same or different from what you have this named in the content bank. You can also give a description here that explains what this activity is if you like. I'm going to expand all so we can scroll right on down. When we create an H5P, it's called a package, an H5P package. So next we need to add the package file to this. And I can do that when it loads here. I should have an option to upload my package file. I'll be able to pull directly from the content bank. Much like when you're uploading other files, when you click at this piece of paper, you'll be given all of the different places that you can pull a file from. We built this in the content bank. That's where we're going to get it. Here it is. I'm going to double click on flashcards. Now, this is probably what I love most about using the content bank. I have two options. I can make a copy of this file, meaning here it is in the content bank. I'm literally making a copy and putting the copy out in the course, or a link to the file. Link to the file means that I am literally just linking directly into the content bank. And why does that matter? It matters because I've gone through, all of a sudden I found an error in my H5P. If I've created a link, I can go back to the content bank, update the H5P in there, and anywhere that I've created a link to that particular H5P package, that update will automatically be reflected. If I'm making a copy of the file, I will have to make that change in everywhere that I have a copy of this file. So having things in the content bank and creating a link to it now gives you a single place to make those changes. Probably one of my favorite features about the content bank. Now, there are, as I mentioned, there are pluses and minuses to content bank versus using the plugin. At eThink by OpenLMS, we are agnostic as far as which choice people make. So you just have to pick the one that works best for you. There's lots of information out there. There are Google Docs. If you're active in the Moodle community, you can go out to the Moodle forums and read there the different things that people bring up about why they use one over the other. I am a big fan of using the content bank for obvious reasons, but here it is. So once I'm done, I just select that file. There it is. But now I have H5P options here. So I can allow people to download the package file if I want. I can have an embed button, so it's embedded, or I can add a copyright button if I want. One of the things to know is I also now have the option for grade associated with this. So if I've added questions or I want there to be a grade associated with it, I can make that happen, or I can choose no grade. I can give people multiple attempts, and you're wondering like, all right, flashcard, big deal. Not a big deal necessarily for flashcard, but if I have someone running through, and here's that interactive book, it did come up, something like an interactive book where I have questions, I can actually review all of those attempts and see exactly how people performed on this. And we'll do that in just a second. I can pick the grading method if they can review their attempts. I have those common module settings. Restrict access is the same. Activity completion, here the conditions are view it or receive a grade for it. Receive a grade only works if you're making this a graded activity. Everything else is the same as all of our other pieces, all of our other activities. Let's save and display. This is going to take us to what it's going to look like when this activity comes up for people. One of the things to know about H5P is it just renders abnormally large on the screen. This is in part because of the way that it tries to be responsive for mobile devices. There are ways around it. If things are showing up huge, there are ways to limit the maximum container size and still allow this to be responsive. That's something your admin would handle. But if you're finding that your activities are like way off the screen, it's making it hard for people, talk to your admin about limiting the container size, but maintaining responsiveness. And that responsiveness means whether they're on a telephone, their mobile phone, a tablet, an iPad, a Chromebook, or whatever they're on, it's going to scale down to the appropriate size for their screen. And so this is what my learner's going to see. They can click turn and see this and go through all of the different cards. These are mobile friendly. Most of them are accessible, but if you ever have questions about accessibility, just Google H5P and accessibility and you will go right to their page. I will put all of these links in for you in a document in this course where you're able to actually check the accessibility piece on different things. So you'll know right up front if there's a problem. I mentioned that interactive book. It did load. This particular book is quite large. Here you can see I have this page in this book and I can scroll down through the page. Everyone creates their books differently. I am someone who does not do long pages. I like pages to be short so that people don't have to scroll very far. But what you can see here is that Michael has created a podcast introduction. He's included the transcript, which is actually something that can be toggled open and closed. He has images, and he has a question here. I see opportunities for using interactive book. I can say true and click check. And there you go. Yes, I'm supposed to see opportunities. Interactive book lets you put lots of stuff in one place for people to go through, but I did want to show that to you while we were here. I'm going to stop now and see if there are any questions that I can answer now before we jump over to gradebook. We are definitely not going to get to necessarily everything today. I'm going to post my full accessibility PowerPoint over into the course for you to look at since we won't run through the whole thing. We've touched on it throughout. We've gotten through quite a few of these. We'll skip the breakout, but I want to make sure that we do get into gradebook because that is a question that lots of people have asked about. So I want to leave time for that. And then we'll pick up anything else that we can do. Yes, Lance, I'm so glad Lance is doing. So Solange has posted that the H5P session with Lance Rowe is Thursday at 11 to 11:50. Lance gave a very similar presentation last year and it was fantastic. So I highly recommend that if you're interested in H5P, definitely go to Lance's session. All right, questions from anyone? Take a drink here. Let's take another quick 10-minute break. I feel like this is the point where people start to feel really overloaded. I can tend to talk fast and put a lot in here, but let's take a quick 10-minute break. We will come back at 5:25 Eastern, so 3:25 Mountain. Thanks, Hart. I'll hang out this time. My kids have actually left for a little while with my mom, so it's quiet and I can sit. I will, but Hart is here. She is a great resource. Hart can answer lots of questions that I don't know, and so she is a good resource. I will hang out if you have questions. Otherwise, please feel free to step away, take a break, stretch your legs, and we will meet you back here in 10 minutes. All right, everybody, we're back. We are going to jump into the grade book now, everyone's favorite topic. I will tell you this about gradebook. Gradebook is a really big topic, and so it can feel very overwhelming. It's also one of those things that I think we approach in the sense that it is the one thing we don't want to mess up in our courses, right? Like if we mess up an assignment, we mess up an assignment. When we mess up the grade book, the consequences are pretty significant. And so I think we're all a little bit afraid of that, right? So let's take a look at grade book and look at the resources that we have in the course here for you to come back to so that you can get more out of grade book. I am going to, let's see, let me move a few things around here. There we go. All right. I'm back here in our course. Let's turn our editing off and get a look at things. All right. Editing is off. I'm going to close this over here on the side. Let's look at the tutorials option that I have here. So what I've done is I've uploaded a lot of tutorials for you, and you're going to find that these are video walkthroughs, lots of stuff here. You're really basically getting our Moodle for new users course that we run through the Academy content out here for the next week or so that this stays open. That's what all of this content is. So you're kind of getting all of that, you know, kind of free, unless you paid for the swag here at the conference, and hopefully you did. But these are what these tutorials are. I have a couple in here about gradebook. We have the gradebook in-depth look, and we also have mastering the gradebook architecture. In the course setup, I believe it is, nope, not there. That's where I have some information about the different formats. But here you can get that really deep look into gradebook and what it is and how to set it up. And then this lesson here will kind of walk you through some other things. Other things that I've included in here is my Universal Design for Learning H5P that tells you a little bit about what UDL is. And I have a lesson that's about building accessible content. So even though we didn't get into those things specifically today, you have that here. Also put some information in about using wikis because that comes up sometimes. And I've got a lesson about the quiz module and question bank and setting up that advanced grading, which we looked at with rubric and grading guide. So lots of other information in here for you. But definitely take a look at these two here for gradebook if you're curious after we go through our gradebook bit here to learn more about gradebook. So I access gradebook by coming over to the navigation drawer and clicking grades. This is going to take me to the grader report. I won't scroll down because it's going to give you the list of everyone who is in this course, and I don't want to do that. But even though you can see it, this is just kind of a thing that I do when I'm sharing. But what you see here are lots of tabs. Now, when we need to set our gradebook up, we need to do that here through the setup tab. The setup tab is where we're going to be able to set that gradebook up. Now you're going to see things are already in here. When you create anything in your Moodle course that has a grade associated with it, it will populate here in the gradebook, and then you can manipulate it from this point on. You can change the weight, you can put it in a category, you can do all kinds of things. But those things are here. The first thing though to know is even though we want to set up our gradebook, we really need to look at our course grade settings first. This is the overarching grade settings for this whole course. So I can pick my aggregation position. So if I have a category and I have 4 quizzes, I want the average to go at the end, that aggregate to go at the end. That makes sense. Or I can choose to have that first, last, default is last. I can make a choice here about the minimum and maximum grades used in the calculation. And those are, there's a couple options here. We tend to keep most things set to default. Grade display type is important though. Remember I talked about how you might have someone or you may have an assignment that's only worth 50 points. That is going to be the real amount. The real amount is just the point amount. So if it's worth 50 points, you're only going to see your achieved score out of 50. Other options here are to combine different display types. So a lot of times what people will do is they want that real to be there and then the percentage. So if I got 25 out of that 50 and I had this set to real and percentage, what I would see as a learner is my 25 points and in parentheses, the 50%. And so that is what we're able to display. If you have letter grades set up on your site, that has to be kind of set up. You can display letters with real combined with percentage, whatever you like, but this is what's going to display for the overall course. I can choose my overall decimal places for my grade as well. And so I have a default of 2 decimal places, and I can pick anything up to 5 or as low as 0. When I come to the overview report, I can choose to show a student's ranking in the course. Now, this can be problematic because do we want them to know how they're ranked in the course? I think not really. I've not seen where this has spurred people to work harder or anything like that. I have seen where this has caused a lot of anxiety and unhealthy competitiveness and bullying in courses. And so you'll note that the default here is set to hide. This next one is pretty important. Hide totals if they contain hidden items. So if we don't want, so let's say I have those 4 quizzes and I have the grades in, but 2 of those quizzes are still hidden. This will mean that the total for that will not show up. That's the default on this site. I tend to show totals excluding the hidden items. So I've got 4 quizzes, 2 of them have grades, 2 of them don't. What my total shows is the average of just the 2 that are visible to my students right now. They don't see the hidden grades factored in yet. This matters when we're talking about scheduled release of grades. So I have everyone submitting forum posts or a paper, and rather than grading all the papers on Friday after they're due, I'm grading them as they're coming in. But I don't want grades trickling out. I want them all to go out at one time. I can set that grade to be hidden until a certain date, and then when it becomes unhidden, it shows for everyone. Even though there's a grade in there, I know that if I include those hidden items in that grade aggregation, that total, what's going to happen is when I put the grade in, people are going to kind of figure out that I've entered the grade and they don't see the grade. So my advice here is go to show totals excluding those hidden items. The user report is what your students see. So when they log in and they're looking at their grades, they're looking at the user report. You are able to view their user's report either as yourself or as the student so that you can see what they see. But these are all the options that you could show on their user report. So we could show the rank, we can show percentage, we can show their grades. We can show them their feedback right on the user report. We can show the weighting, so how each item is weighted in the course. We can show the average, which is the average score for the class on any given activity. Often that is set to the default of hide because again, we need to weigh whether or not we want people to know where their score fell according to the average in the course. If we are using letter grades, we can set those to show or hide. We can show the contribution to the course total. So even if I have things weighted, if the grades aren't in for everything yet, as far as all my weighted items, the gradebook will automatically scale and take what's in there and give it like a scaled portion of the overall course total and the contribution. This can get super confusing to students, and you have to decide whether or not you want to show that or not. If you want more information on what that means, definitely click this question mark here. The ranges, I can show the high and low grade. The decimal places for ranges, and then show hidden items, default only hidden until. Other options are don't show any hidden items, only hidden until, or show hidden. And then we can hide totals again if they contain hidden items. So this is specific to that user report. That's why you see it twice on here. Up top is the course setting for the grader report. Down here is the user report. Once we've made those changes for the course settings, we just click save and we're kicked back out to that grader report. The grader report is where I can see every assignment, every learner enrolled in my course, and all of the grades that are there. I also have a yellow box that might show up on certain grades. That's an indicator that I have had a grade override. I've overridden that grade for some reason. If I want to set up my actual gradebook now, and I have my items in here, but I want to arrange them a little bit differently, I can do that here. I can move things up and down the order here in the gradebook. It really doesn't matter where things are as far as that order. It doesn't impact how that impacts the overall course grade. Looking at this, I can see that we're using the natural grading aggregation method. I won't be able to spend a lot of time on aggregation methods here. Definitely look at that advanced grading resource that I put in there. But the 3 aggregation methods that I tend to talk about are natural, which is what this is, weighted mean of grades, and simple weighted mean of grades. Simple weighted mean of grades, you don't actually get to change the weight. Everything in the course is given the exact same weight. So 10 items in the course, each one is weighted at 10%. 20 items in the course, each one is weighted at 5%. And that's how it happens. You don't get to pick that. This is natural, and I know that because I can adjust the individual weights here, and I can see those max grades, and I don't see any of the multiplicators and things like that I sometimes see in weighted mean. Natural means that you're just assigning the weight, and that's it. There's not a multiplier where we're saying that, yeah, this is worth 25%, but we're going to multiply it by 2. None of that's happening. Natural has become my personal preferred way of creating grade books and using the aggregation because it's very intuitive and it's very simple. It just makes sense. So that's, I actually learned about the natural grading aggregation here at this Mountain Moot. It was my second Mountain Moot, and Ryan went into all about the grade book. So Ryan Hazen delivered a session about grade book. And in that session, he went into why he was using the natural grading aggregation, and I was hooked from there. What you're going to see is that these weights are distributed already, right? And they're kind of like cattywampus. They're all over the place, but they add up to 100 because the overall weight, the maximum that this course is worth, you can have everything add up to 100% of the course. Now, everything is just sort of sitting here in the grade book, and that's fine if you're okay with that. But sometimes students like to see all their exams in one thing, their assignments, their forums in categories. Here's how we create those categories. We're in the grade book, we're at the grader report, we're going to click setup. Down at the bottom, we have 2 options, add a grade item. So this is something that's not tied to a Moodle activity necessarily, but is going to have a grade. So some examples of that might be if we have students doing assignments on an external site, and when they do them and they turn them in, they get credit for it. Or if we are using an activity that actually doesn't have a grade associated with it, something like wiki, and we want people to fill out the wiki, it's not something that has grade associated with it, we can actually create a manual graded item for that wiki activity and still give people a grade. Category, though, is how we're going to organize things. So let's add a category. So here we're going to go with lessons. The aggregation method here should match your course aggregation. I have seen many grade books where there is one aggregation method for a category and a different one for the course overall. I will tell you now, avoid that as much as you can. It causes lots of problems. It becomes very difficult to figure out whether your grade book is correct and to understand how the aggregations are working together. First thing you want to do here is click more, and that is because this is where you can do a tick box for the category to exclude empty grades. So you're starting to see we're like making that setting everywhere, right? We can drop the lowest grade in the category if we want to. This works if everything in the category has the same maximum points and the same weight. And the reason that matters is because let's say I have 4 lessons and the first 2 are worth 25% each, and then the next 2 are worth 12.5%. And Matt has his lowest grade is on the one that's 12%, but my lowest grade is on the lesson that was 25%. When we drop our lowest, now we're not dealing with the same number of maximum points or weightings in that category. So just know that when you're using drop the lowest in something like natural, everything in the category has to be out of the same maximum number of points and have the same weight. Under category total, some of these are going to default, all right? We can give it a name if we want and change it. We can set a grade to pass for the category. I have worked in places where students had to have a certain grade in on their tests to pass the course. So if they had to have a test average of 75, it didn't matter if they aced everything else in the course, they failed the test, then they ended up failing. It was helpful to have the grade to pass associated with the category. What this does is give you a visual indicator. When you go into the grade book, you'll see everything that is at or above the grade to pass will be green. Anything that is below grade to pass will be red. I can choose again that grade display, decimal points. Remember I talked about hiding grade items? I can hide a whole category grade until a certain point. I can do that for individual grade items as well. Hart's got an awesome KB right there, a knowledge-based type article right in the chat right now, all about dropping the lowest score. Coming down, maximum grade, minimum grade, weight adjusted. You can tick this here, or we can just fix it when we get back out to the main gradebook page. My experience has been, even if I adjust the grade here, I always have to go back out to the main page and fix it anyway. So here's our category. We've created it. It's going to be way down here at the bottom. There they are, lessons. Now I want to move all my lessons in there. And I'm going to click this arrow, and I'm just going to scroll down and say, put this under lessons. And it's going to automatically move it there once I've made that click. So let that load, and I'll move all my lessons together. Uh-oh, we're slowing down again. While that's loading, basically what happens is you can move everything around and you can start clustering them in categories. One of the things that you can do with this then is to say all of my exams are worth 60% in my course and my lessons are worth, say, 40%. Tells me my weights are adjusted. Okay, here's all my lessons. I'm going to say that my lessons, I'm going to tick this box and say they're worth 40% of the overall course grade. Each of the lessons within are then broken down by weight. This weight is the weight of this. So it is worth 66% of that 40%. That's how this breaks down. If these were all equal, I can just set them to 50 and 50. When you first set up natural and you start to use categories, it will automatically default and it will equally distribute what's in there, what's in your different, what's in the category. Sometimes it doesn't, because here's the difference. You see how each of these is worth a different max grade? Well, originally this was worth 66 and this was worth 33. And that was how Moodle was automatically redistributing weight to make it equal. I tend to tell people that whenever possible, just make everything in the course out of the same maximum score. If you have a rubric that's out of 10 points and someone gets an 8 out of 10, still 80%. You could have done that as 80 points out of 100, right? Or the max score for that actual activity should have been 100, and it will automatically scale. It will make your life so much easier if you just make everything out of the same max points. It doesn't change how it's weighted. It doesn't change the percentage, and it doesn't really change anything for the student, except that it makes more sense to them to see things broken down. I see this as a particular hardship sometimes for students who really struggle with math, especially in like the K through 6, K through 7 group. Some assignments are worth 5 points. Some assignments are worth 100 points. And when you give someone a 3.5 out of 5 and they're in 5th grade, when they look at it initially, they don't necessarily know what's going on with it. Even though we could say like they could divide it out, whatever, yes. But if they're getting, you know, a 98 out of 100, that actually computes much easier. It does make it just easier for people to navigate. But now you see that I've overridden these and I've set those weights here. I can create as many categories as I want and house things however I want them to be. Sometimes I have things that I want to see the grade for, but it's not weighted. It's not part of the course grade, but I like to see how people are doing. I tend to create a lot of pre-work and post-work where people can come in and go through a lesson or do a short little multiple choice quiz. Helps me to tailor the teaching for the next time, but it doesn't count against their course grade. Sometimes people want that just to have some practice and they want to be able to have some practice questions. If that's the case, I would create a category called unweighted items, set the category weight to 0, and then move all of those activities that people could get a score on, but don't affect that are not a part of their overall course grade, move them on into that unweighted category. That way they can see their scores on it. You can see them in the grade book. You can actually even hide that category so that students don't see it in their user report, but you're able to see an overview of what's going on. You can also use that as a way to see if you're doing like pre and post tests for like a lecture or a lesson, to see how people performed before and after they actually attended your course. So it's a nice way to help you also kind of fine tune some of your teaching as well. This is the overall like crash course in gradebook. There is so much more to talk about with gradebook, but we don't have time today because it is a huge topic. So definitely head into our course here and take a look at some of those resources that I've posted. Right up at toward the end of the time here, I am going to stop for some questions, but some other things that you're going to see pop up in this course. I'm going to add a video about how to use the CSV to upload users both to the site and just into courses, adding them into groups if you'd like. I'll put that video in there for you later. I will also give a walkthrough on how to set up grading guides so that you see it. I think I have a video already set to share with you that shows you what it looks like when you're grading using rubric and grading guide as well. And if I do, I'll pop that in here. And I will also, yeah, I think that's what I had as far as putting extra resources in. Oh, I have an infographic about H5P versus Moodle core activities so that you can kind of look at that. Solange has just also posted in the chat that there is a gradebook science session with Ryan Hazen Thursday at 8 a.m. And he entitles it, "It's Not as Scary as It Seems." And I would agree with that. Ryan gives a fantastic gradebook session. I have attended it many times. I learn something new every time. I would definitely think that he is your go-to for gradebook. Also, make sure you check out Lance Rowe's session on H5P and, kind of float around and check out some different things. I thank you all very much for coming. Please check back into the course. Reach out to me. Hold on. I actually have a little slide here with all my contact information. Let me go. There we go. So if you have any additional questions, please hang out here. I'm happy to answer them. I'll hang out for as long as you want. And if you want to connect with me either during or after the moot, you can email me at amy.tessitore@openlms.net. I am on Twitter at Barefoot Breeze, and I am on LinkedIn at AmyTessitore. Don't forget, you earn moot coins by tweeting. When you tweet things out from sessions, tweet out some information that you think others will want to hear or learn about, make sure to include the hashtag MtMoot. Those are tracked. If you're not familiar with this particular conference, moot coins are currency. There will be an actual live auction that goes off later in the week where you are able to use your moot coins to bid on actual real items for things. And it is a lot of fun. We do something very similar when we're there in person with a cryptocurrency that's specific to this moot. But make sure that you're tweeting out as well to earn some coins and to learn and be able to follow that hashtag, learn lots about the sessions you're not able to go to. Thank you all for being here. I'm here if you have any questions. Yes, the games. That's right. There's a game night tonight and a game night tomorrow where we will be playing online games with each other. So make sure to check out with that. I think there's going to be some Among Us, Jackbox games, virtual Cards Against Humanity. You will see me there. I'm hosting a game table tonight as well. Thanks, Teresa. Thank you, Alberto. Thanks, Lindsay. part it is. The last time that I gave this was in like 2018 or 2019. And I think I was a last minute, Ryan approached me to give this last minute because I think Michael Spall was sick and he couldn't do a workshop. And I think I was on the plane when I put the presentation together, but I was like, why is the agenda is getting really hard to get through today? And it was because when we were in person, I think our sessions were 4 hours long. I think we did 2 4-hour blocks instead of a 3-hour block. So I had like an hour of extra content in there that I had already like been kind of cutting out, but definitely more that we could have gotten to today. Yeah, I thought so. I was like, I think they're 4 hours when we're in person. That's why I checked with Matt right as we started. I was like, is it 3 hours? That's why, because I thought it was 4 hours. So. All right, looks like there's no questions. Let's all hop off, take a breather. We do have game night tonight. Hopefully we'll see you there. One of the things that makes this moot what it is the networking and the connections that we form here. And game night is no different. We have lots of fun at game night. So stop by. Hopefully we'll see you there. And that's all for me. Thanks, Matt, for facilitating and moderating for me.
You bet. Thanks for everything. That was awesome.
Thanks. All right. All right, need anything else from me or are we all set, Matt?
I think we're all set. Appreciate it
All
again.
right, cool. All right, see ya.
See you tonight.